Hello, everyone, and welcome to AI History of Western Philosophy. Before we begin, our usual friendly reminder, our commentary is AI generated, and it's certainly no substitute for reading the text yourself. Our goal is to discuss these ideas and hopefully help find a way into the text, not to act as the final word on it.
We hope you'll read along with us. Today we're diving into a foundational and famously difficult figure, Heraclitus of Ephesus. The book is Fragments, the collected wisdom of Heraclitus, translated by Brooks Haxton.
Heraclitus is one of those philosophers who feels both ancient and incredibly modern. The summary for this collection describes his work as being characterized by a deconstructive mind and a psychological approach, which sounds like something written in the 20th century, not the 6th century BCE.
It's fascinating, but the first and most important thing to understand is that we don't actually have his book. Ancient tradition says he wrote a single papyrus roll, possibly called On Nature, and deposited it in the great temple of Artemis at Ephesus for safekeeping.
A strategy which, unfortunately, did not work. What we have today are just fragments, quotations from Heraclitus that were embedded in the works of later writers, from Plato all the way to medieval philosophers. So our entire access to his thought is through these scattered pieces.
And the people who quoted him weren't exactly neutral archivists. They were using his words for their own arguments. Plato, for instance, used a version of Heraclitus as the classic philosopher of universal flux, a kind of intellectual foil for his own ideas about eternal, stable forms.
Right, and the Stoics were huge fans. They preserved a lot of his work because they adopted and systematized his idea of the logos. Then you have Christian writers like Clement of Alexandria who preserved fragments because they saw a parallel between the Heraclitean logos and the divine word in the Gospel of John.
So the collection of fragments we have is inherently biased toward what later thinkers found interesting or useful. Even the popular image of Heraclitus as this arrogant, weeping loner is something the historical context tells us to be extremely skeptical of.
Exactly, this context is crucial. The preface to this edition even notes that the fragmented state of the work isn't just a historical accident, but might actually reflect the philosophy itself. It's a philosophy that isn't about giving exhaustive explanations because, as one fragment says, things keep their secrets.
So, what are the big ideas we should be looking for in these fragments? At the core is the idea that nothing is stable, everything is in constant flux. His central metaphor for this constant shifting process is fire. He says, all things change to fire, and fire exhausted falls back into things.
The translator, Brooks Haxton, even makes a connection between this idea of energy as the essence of matter and Einstein's E equals mc squared. And holding all this change together is a concept he called the logos, which is like a universal source or holistic logic that guides the cosmos and ensures that all is one.
This unity is a key theme. It's a harmony achieved through tension and opposites. Day and night, war and peace, plenty and famine, they aren't separate things but parts of a single unified process. His philosophy is a process metaphysics, meaning he shifted the question from, what is the world made of, to, how does the world work?
And that's how we need to approach reading him. We have to embrace the obscurity and paradox. His style is meant to be like the Delphic oracle, which neither declares nor conceals, but shows by a sign. It forces us, the readers, to do the difficult work of interpretation to find the connections. It's also why he encourages self-reflection, to inquire within and know ourselves.
So, our task is to read these fragments against each other, looking for that hidden unity he talks about. It should be a fascinating, if challenging, read. I'm ready to jump in.
The word proves those first hearing it as numb to understanding as the ones who have not heard. Yet all things follow from the word. Some, blundering with what I set before you, try in vain with empty talk to separate the essences of things and say how each thing truly is. And all the rest make no attempt. They no more see how they behave broad waking than remember clearly what they did asleep.
Translator's note, Bywater 1 and 2 are transposed here to put the poetic passage about the word first, as several translators have already done. The usual translation of the Greek logos has been word. This reverberates with the diction in the standard version of the Gospel according to John, in the beginning was the Word. John must have had the powerful tradition of Heraclitean thought in mind when he used this term in his original Greek. Logos indicates not only the lexical word, but also all means of making ideas known, as well as ideas themselves, the phenomena to which ideas respond, and the rules that govern both phenomena and ideas. The holistic logic, logos, of this range of meanings must have been a large part of the word's appeal, as the next fragment confirms. In the second sentence in the Greek, ambiguous syntax may suggest that Heraclitus separated the essences of things and said how each thing truly is. It may mean, on the other hand, that the ignorant failed to do this. The latter seems more plausible, since Heraclitus makes no other such personal claim for his accomplishment, but insists repeatedly on the limits of such claims, as in the next fragment.
So, right out of the gate, Heraclitus is not pulling any punches. The word proves those first hearing it as numb to understanding as the ones who have not heard. He's basically telling us up front that just listening to him speak or reading his words is not enough.
It immediately establishes this idea we talked about in the intro, that understanding him requires active, difficult work. He's dividing the world into two groups, those who haven't heard the logos and those who've heard it but are still completely numb to it. And it seems the second group is his primary target.
And that translator's note is absolutely essential here. The word is a translation of the Greek logos. It's not just a word in a sentence. The note says it's a holistic logics that encompasses ideas, the phenomena the ideas respond to, and the rules governing both. It's the underlying structure of reality itself, and the very next line says, yet all things follow from the word.
So there's this profound paradox. The single most important principle that governs everything is something that most people are completely deaf to, even when it's presented directly to them.
Exactly. And then he describes how people fail to grasp it. He points a finger at a specific group, those who try with empty talk to separate the essences of things. This feels like a direct shot at a certain kind of philosopher, doesn't it? The kind who tries to neatly categorize and define everything into static boxes.
It connects perfectly to what the summary said about him focusing on process, not substance. He seems to be saying that trying to pin down a fixed essence of a thing is a fool's errand because the fundamental reality is flux, governed by this logos. To separate things is to miss the hidden attunements that connects them.
And then he turns to everyone else, and all the rest make no attempt. He compares their waking life to being asleep. That's such a powerful and damning image. He's saying the average person is sleepwalking through their existence, completely unaware of the fundamental principles governing their own actions and the world around them.
That comparison is just devastating. It implies a total lack of self-awareness and critical thought. They're just going through the motions, completely disconnected from the logos that is happening all around them and through them. The note about the ambiguous syntax is also fascinating, that it's unclear if Heraclitus is claiming he successfully separates essences or if he's saying the ignorant fail to. The translator's choice here seems right, though. It feels more in line with his style to be criticizing others' failures rather than boasting about his own achievements. It reinforces this role of the gadfly, trying to wake everyone up.
For wisdom, listen not to me but to the word, and know that all is one.
Wow, okay. So after telling us that everyone is basically sleepwalking, he immediately gives the prescription. And it's listen not to me but to the word. That's such a crucial distinction. He's saying, don't get hung up on Heraclitus the man. I'm just the one pointing. The wisdom isn't in me. It's in the principle I'm trying to show you.
Exactly. It takes the ego right out of it, or at least it claims to. He's not a prophet delivering a divine message that is true because he says so. He's more like a guide saying, look through this telescope, don't look at the telescope. The logos is the thing to be observed. It reminds me of what we read in the introduction, about his style being like the Delphic oracle which shows by a sign. He, the speaker, is the sign.
And the result of looking through that telescope? Know that all is one. That's it. That's the big reveal. It's the central claim we were told to look for in the summary, that the logos is the holistic logic that upholds all being and confirms that all is one. This is the foundational axiom of his entire philosophy, stated as plainly as possible.
It's so concise, but it holds everything. The first fragment is the diagnosis of the human condition, general ignorance. And this second fragment is both the method for enlightenment, listen to the logos, and the core truth that disenlightenment reveals, oneness. Everything else he says is probably going to be an elaboration on this single point.
Those unmindful when they hear, for all they make of their intelligence, may be regarded as the walking dead.
He's doubling down. First, people were numb, then they were asleep, and now they're the walking dead. The imagery just keeps getting more and more intense.
It's a huge escalation, and he specifically targets those who make of their intelligence. This isn't just a critique of the ignorant masses. He's talking about the clever people, the educated, the ones who think they know what's going on.
It's a direct attack on conventional intelligence. He's saying that if your intellect doesn't lead you to the logos, to the understanding that all is one, then it's not just useless, it's a kind of self-deception. It's the kind of intelligence that gets caught up in what he called empty talks in the first fragment, separating essences instead of seeing connections.
Exactly. Being smart is no defense against being one of the walking dead. In fact, it might make you more susceptible because your own cleverness can blind you to the deeper truth. It confirms what the summary told us to expect. For Heraclitus, wisdom is something beyond mere cleverness. To miss the logos is to be fundamentally disconnected from reality, to be alive physically but not in any way that truly matters. A zombie.
People dull their wits with gibberish and cannot use their ears and eyes.
He really has a talent for these short, brutal assessments of humanity. People dull their wits with gibberish. It's so direct. This gibberish sounds a lot like the empty talk he mentioned in the first fragment.
It does, but I think the verb he uses is key. They dull their wits. It's not a passive state of ignorance, it's something they actively do to themselves. They are consuming gibberish, maybe common opinions, superstitions, the pointless chatter of the day, and it's having the direct effect of making them less able to think clearly.
And the consequence of that is that they cannot use their ears and eyes. It's not that they're literally blind or deaf. It's that their senses, which should be the primary tools for perceiving the logos in the world, are rendered useless. The mental static from the gibberish is so loud that they can't see or hear the reality that's right in front of them.
Exactly. It perfectly explains how someone becomes one of the walking dead. You fill your mind with nonsense, which dulls your capacity for real thought, which in turn prevents you from perceiving the world as it actually is. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of ignorance. He's demanding that we tune out the noise to actually see and hear.
Many fail to grasp what they have seen and cannot judge what they have learned, although they tell themselves they know.
And here's the next step in his diagnosis. First, in the last fragment, he said people cannot use their ears and eyes. Now he clarifies, it's not that the senses don't work. They have seen things. The failure is in the next step. They fail to grasp it.
Right, the data comes in, but the mind doesn't process it. And it's the same with learning. They cannot judge what they have learned, so there's a breakdown in both perception and judgment. They see the world, they hear ideas, but they lack the critical framework, the logos, to make any sense of it.
But the most damning part of the fragment is the end, although they tell themselves they know. That's the real trap. It's not just that they're ignorant, they're convinced of their own knowledge. It's a complete delusion.
It's the ultimate barrier to wisdom. If you don't know something, there's a chance you can learn it. But if you think you already know it, you'll never listen. You'll just keep dulling your wits with that gibberish he mentioned, reinforcing your own false certainty. This is the perfect psychological profile of the walking dead he talked about earlier. They're asleep, but they're dreaming that they're awake.
Yet they lack the skill to listen or to speak.
And here's the consequence of all that delusion. Yet they lack the skill to listen or to speak. It's so simple and so devastating.
The listening part connects directly back to what he's been saying. People cannot use their ears, and they fail to listen to the word. He's framing it here as a skill, which is interesting. It's not just a passive ability you're born with. It's a craft you have to develop.
Right, it's a discipline. But the skill to speak part is new. He's already told us what bad speech is. It's that empty talk and gibberish. So skillful speech must be the opposite. It must be speech that's in harmony with the logos. Speech that doesn't try to falsely separate things but reflects their unity.
They're totally connected, aren't they? You can't have the skill to speak truthfully if you don't first have the skill to listen to the truth of the logos. If you can't perceive reality correctly, all you can produce is noise. You're just repeating the gibberish you've been fed.
Exactly. It makes his whole project seem like an attempt to teach these two skills. His fragments are exercises in listening. You have to listen carefully to them to find the hidden meaning. And they're also models of skillful speaking. They're dense, paradoxical, and point toward a unified truth rather than spelling everything out in a simplistic way.
So he's saying that most people are incompetent at the two most fundamental human activities for engaging with reality and with each other. They can't take in the world as it is, and they can't articulate anything meaningful about it. No wonder he calls them the walking dead.
Whoever cannot seek the unforeseen sees nothing, for the known way is an impasse.
Wow, this might be one of the most important fragments yet for understanding his method. Whoever cannot seek the unforeseen sees nothing. That's a direct challenge to how we normally think about knowledge.
It's a complete paradox, isn't it? How can you seek something that is, by definition, unforeseen? It sounds impossible. But the second half of the line explains the necessity, for the known way is an impasse.
Exactly. The known ways is that gibberish and empty talk he's been criticizing. It's the path of common sense, of received wisdom, of trying to fit everything into neat little boxes. And Heraclitus is saying that path is not just flawed, it's a complete dead end. An impasse. You literally can't make any progress that way.
So, true seeing, true wisdom requires a state of radical openness. It's not about looking for evidence to confirm what you already believe. It's about actively looking for the thing that will surprise you, the thing that doesn't fit your current understanding.
It feels like he's giving us instructions on how to read his own work. If you read these fragments looking for them to make sense in a conventional, straightforward way, the known way, you'll see nothing. You'll hit an impasse. You have to be open to the paradoxical, the unforeseen meaning that emerges from the tension in his words.
That's it. This fragment is the antidote to being one of the walking dead. The walking dead are the ones who are stuck on the known way, telling themselves they know, when in reality they're just walking in circles at a dead end. To seize, to break out of that impasse by actively searching for what you don't expect.
Men dig tons of earth to find an ounce of gold.
That's a fantastic image. So simple and so true. Men dig tons of earth to find an ounce of gold. He's clearly not just talking about mining. This has to be a metaphor for the search for wisdom.
Absolutely. The ounce of gold must be the logos, that understanding that all is one he mentioned in Fragment 2. And the tons of earth, that's all the gibberish and empty talk he keeps railing against. It's the mass of common opinions, everyday distractions, and flawed ideas you have to sift through.
Right. And the key is the work involved, the digging. It connects back to what we've been saying about his philosophy not being easy. Wisdom isn't lying on the surface for you to just pick up. You have to actively dig for it, and you have to be willing to move a lot of worthless material out of the way to get to the valuable part.
It also explains why so few people find it. Most people are content with the earth. They see the huge pile of dirt and think that's all there is. Or worse, as he said in Fragment 5, they tell themselves they know, they've convinced themselves that the dirt is the gold.
It's such an elitist view, in a way. He's saying that true knowledge is incredibly rare and most people are just messing around in the mud, but it's also a statement of value. He's saying the payoff, that single ounce of gold, is worth the monumental effort of digging through all that earth. It makes the philosophical quest seem both heroic and almost impossibly difficult.
See note, translator's note. The discussion of Heraclitus here omitted is from the Suda, or Suidas, an unreliable literary encyclopedia from about the 10th century CEE.
Okay, so no actual fragment here, just a note from the translator, Brooks Haxton.
It's an interesting choice. He's explicitly telling us he's cut something out because the source, a 10th century encyclopedia, is unreliable.
This goes right back to what we discussed in the introduction. So much of what we think we know about Heraclitus comes from these later, often biased or flawed sources. Haxton is being transparent here about his role as a curator, not just a translator. He's actively filtering out what he considers historical clutter.
It's a good decision, I think. It keeps the focus on the fragments that have a stronger claim to authenticity. It shows how carefully you have to construct a book like this. On to the next one.
Things keep their secrets.
After that little editorial note, we get this. Things keep their secrets. Just 4 words. It feels like we just hit a bedrock principle for him.
It's the perfect follow-up to men dig tons of earth to find an ounce of gold. Why do you have to dig so much? Because things keep their secrets. The truth isn't just lying on the surface.
Exactly. This statement justifies his entire obscure style. He's not being difficult for the sake of it. He's being difficult because reality is difficult. The world doesn't offer up simple, exhaustive explanations. It offers signs, clues, things that have to be interpreted. It reminds me of that line from the summary, wisdom is revealed not through systems or exhaustive explanations, since things keep their secrets.
It's a profound challenge to any philosophy that claims it can create a perfect, complete system that explains everything. Heraclitus is saying that's impossible. There will always be a hidden dimension, a secret depth that you can't fully map out.
And that's why you have to seek the unforeseen. If you approach the world thinking you already have the map, you'll never discover the secrets. You'll just trace over your own known lines and miss everything important. This is the core of his epistemology, right here. The world is fundamentally mysterious, and any true knowledge has to start by respecting that mystery.
Yet without obscurity or needless explanation, the true prophet signifies.
Translator's note, see the note on 12.
Okay, this fragment feels like a direct commentary on his own style. Yet without obscurity or needless explanation, the true prophet signifies. At first, without obscurity seems like a total contradiction of everything we've experienced so far.
It does, but I think the key is in the balance of that phrase. It's without obscurity or needless explanation. He's walking a very fine line. The obscurity isn't there for its own sake, to be intentionally confusing. It's there because a needless explanation would be a lie. It would be pretending you can fully explain something that, as he just told us, keeps its secrets.
Exactly. The goal isn't to be obscure, nor is it to be simplistic. The goal is to signify. That verb is everything. A prophet, or a wise person in his view, doesn't declare the truth in a lecture, and they don't hide it behind a curtain. They give you a sign. They point. This brings us right back to that quote from the introduction about the Delphic oracle, which neither declares nor conceals, but shows by a sign.
Right. So his fragments are the signs. They are designed to point you toward the logos without falsely claiming to capture its totality in a neat little formula. A needless explanation would be just another form of that gibberish he was talking about, the kind that dulls the wits. The true prophet avoids both the noise of over-explanation and the silence of complete concealment.
And the translator's note just says, see the note on 12, so this idea must be important enough that it gets elaborated on immediately. I'm very curious to see what fragment 12 adds to this.
The prophet's voice possessed of God requires no ornament, no sweetening of tone, but carries over 1,000 years.
Translator's note: the Greek word Sibylla, or Sibyl, appears in this fragment for the first time ever. No one knows where it came from. Ton Theon, the god of Sibylline prophecy, Ho-Anax of the previous fragment, was the Lord Apollo, god of prophetic wisdom and of the cosmic fire of the sun. For more about the word theos, see the introduction.
So this is what the last note was pointing to. This fragment is the other side of the coin from the previous one. Fragment 11 told us what the prophet does, he signifies. This one tells us how his voice sounds.
Exactly. Requires no ornament, no sweetening of tone. This is a direct attack on rhetoric and sophistry, on any kind of speech designed to be pleasing or persuasive through style rather than substance. The truth, the voice of the logos, doesn't need to be dressed up. Its power is inherent.
And the payoff for that directness is immense. It carries over 1,000 years. This feels deeply self-referential. Heraclitus is describing the kind of speech he's trying to create. He's not trying to win a popularity contest in his own time. He's aiming for a truth so fundamental that it will last forever, even if it's difficult to hear.
And that translator's note adds a whole new layer. The prophet here is the Sibyl, and the god she's possessed by is Apollo. And the note explicitly connects Apollo to the cosmic fire of the sun.
That's a huge connection. We know from the introduction that fire is Heraclitus' central metaphor for the constant flux and change of the logos. So the voice of the prophet, speaking for Apollo, is literally a voice channeling the essence of cosmic fire.
It ties his metaphysics and his theory of language together perfectly. The fundamental reality is a fiery process, and the truest form of speech is one that embodies that fire. It's direct, unadorned, powerful, and timeless. It's not just about the logos, it's an expression of the logos. The medium and the message are one and the same.
The eye, the ear, the mind in action, these I value.
After all that talk about prophets and secrets, this one feels incredibly direct and clear. The eye, the ear, the mind in action, these I value. It's like he's laying out his entire philosophical toolkit in one sentence.
It's the positive prescription for everything he's been criticizing. He told us people cannot use their ears and eyes because their wits are dulled by gibberish. Now he's stating plainly that using these faculties properly is what he values most. This is the antidote to being one of the walking dead.
I love that phrase, the mind in action. It's not just the mind or thought. It implies an active, dynamic process. It's not enough to have sensory experiences. Your mind has to be actively engaged with them, working on them, judging them, and seeking the unforeseen.
Exactly. It's a three-part system. The eye and the ear are the inputs. They are how you observe the flux of the world, the fire. But that raw data is useless without the mind in action to process it and perceive the underlying logos, the hidden unity. It's a beautiful summary of how to be a philosopher his way. It's grounded in experience, not just abstract reason.
Now that we can travel anywhere, we need no longer take the poets and myth-makers for sure witnesses about disputed facts.
Well, this feels like a direct, practical application of the last fragment. He just told us he values the eye, the ear, the mind in action, and now he gives a concrete example. He's saying, why rely on secondhand information from poets when you can go see for yourself?
Exactly. It's a radical statement for his time. He's essentially dismissing the authority of figures like Homer and Hesiod, who were the primary sources of knowledge about history, geography, and even the nature of the gods for many Greeks. He's saying that direct, empirical observation, traveling and seeing with your own eyes, trumps traditional narrative authority.
It completely reframes his earlier critiques. He's been talking about gibberish and empty talk, and here he's pointing to a major source, the unquestioning acceptance of myths. By taking poets as sure witnesses, people are dulling their wits and failing to use their own senses and judgment.
It's another way of saying the known way is an impasse. The stories of the poets are the known way. Heraclitus is advocating for a new path, intellectual and physical exploration. He's arguing that to get past the impasse of traditional knowledge, you have to be willing to go out and gather your own evidence. It's a profound shift toward valuing personal inquiry over received wisdom.
What eyes witness, ears believe on hearsay?
This feels like the punchline to the last fragment. What eyes witness, ears believe on hearsay. It's so short and sharp.
It is. It's the philosophical rule that underpins his advice in Fragment 14. Don't trust the poet's hearsay. When you can travel and see for yourself, witness. He's drawing a hard line between primary and secondary sources of knowledge.
And he's clearly privileging the primary source. It adds a fascinating layer to Fragment 13, where he said he values the eye, the ear, the mind in action. Now he seems to be creating a hierarchy. The eye is for direct witnessing. The ear, while valuable for listening to the logos, is also the entry point for error, for rumor, for the gibberish he keeps talking about.
It makes perfect sense. The eye connects you directly to the flux of the world. The ear often connects you to other people's attempts to freeze that flux into a simple, easily digestible story. And for Heraclitus, any such static story is almost certainly a lie. Believing hearsay is choosing the known way, and he's already told us that's an impasse.
If learning were a path of wisdom, those most learned about myth would not believe, with Hesiod, that Pallas in her wisdom gloats over the noise of battle.
Translator's note: I have provided my own examples from Hesiod and Pythagoras in this and the next fragment to illustrate their supposed folly. Heraclitus, no doubt, would have chosen other examples.
This fragment is such a direct shot at the idea of being well read. If learning were a path of wisdom, he's saying it's not. He's making a clear distinction between polymathy, knowing a lot of things, and actual wisdom.
It's his most explicit attack yet on what he calls conventional learning in the summary. He's arguing that you can be an expert in the myths, you can have memorized all of Hesiod and still be a complete fool. The example he gives is perfect. Someone learned in mythology would accept the idea that Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom, gloats over the noise of battle.
A true wise person, someone listening to the Logos, would immediately see the contradiction there. How can a being of pure wisdom delight in chaos and destruction? It doesn't compute. But someone who is merely learned just accepts the story as it's written because the authority, Hesiod, said so.
But then you see the translator's note, and it adds a whole other level to this. Haxton admits that the example about Pallas and Hesiod is his own insertion. He's using it to illustrate the kind of point he believes Heraclitus was making.
That's fascinating. It really brings home the interpretive nature of this entire book. We're not just reading Heraclitus, we're reading Haxton's reconstruction of Heraclitus's thought. He's trying to bridge the gap for us by providing a concrete example of the folly Heraclitus would have pointed out.
I think it's a good choice, honestly. It makes the abstract principle that learning isn't wisdom incredibly clear. Even though the words aren't Heraclitus's, the spirit of the critique feels exactly right. It's another attack on the known way, on believing hearsay from the poets, which is a theme he's been hammering on for the last several fragments. The core argument remains Heraclitus's, even if the illustration is modern.
Pythagoras may well have been the deepest in his learning of all men, and still he claimed to recollect details of former lives, being in one a cucumber and one time a sardine.
Translator's note: see note on 16.
So after Hesiod, he goes after another giant, Pythagoras. The structure is almost identical to the last fragment. He starts with a kind of backhanded compliment. Pythagoras may well have been the deepest in his learning of all men.
It's a brilliant rhetorical move. He's saying, let's take the most learned person imaginable, a true polymath, and then he uses that person's own ideas to show that learning, in itself, is not enough. The example here is the doctrine of reincarnation, but presented in the most absurd way possible, being in one a cucumber and one time a sardine.
It's pure ridicule. And again, we have to look at the translator's note. Just like with Fragment 16, Haxton is telling us these specific, silly examples are his own invention to illustrate Heraclitus's point. The original fragment probably just criticized Pythagoras' learning without the vegetable fish specifics.
But the choice of examples is perfect for getting the point across. The message is clear. Your vast learning led you to this. This is the intellectual destination you arrived at. It's the ultimate proof for Heraclitus that knowledge accumulation can be a path to utter nonsense if it isn't guided by true wisdom.
It fits perfectly with his whole project. Pythagoras created a complex system, a whole cosmology full of rules and reincarnations. For Heraclitus, this is just more gibberish, another case of someone digging through tons of earth and getting completely lost in the dirt, failing to find the simple unifying gold of the logos. It's another elaborate known ways that leads to an impasse.
Of all the words yet spoken, none comes quite as far as wisdom, which is the action of the mind beyond all things that may be said.
This feels like the grand summary statement for this entire section. After tearing down learning for learning's sake with Hesiod and Pythagoras, he gives us his positive definition of what he's actually aiming for.
It's a beautiful definition, too. Of all the words yet spoken, none comes quite as far as wisdom. He's not dismissing words entirely. He's a master of words, after all, but he's putting them in their proper place. They are vehicles. They can take you a long way, but they have a final destination, and wisdom is beyond that point.
Exactly. And the second half tells us what that beyond is. Wisdom is the action of the mind beyond all things that may be said. It's not a doctrine. It's not a doctrine. It's not a set of facts or propositions. It's a dynamic state. It goes right back to what he said he values in Fragment 13, the mind in action.
And being beyond all things that may be said connects perfectly to things keep their secrets. The ultimate truth of the Logos, that all is one, can be pointed to with words. It can be signified, but it cannot be fully captured or explained by them. Wisdom is the direct grasping of that secret, an experience that transcends language. ADA, so all his fragments, all his words, are just tools for triggering that action of the minds in the listener. He's not trying to tell us the wisdom, he's trying to provoke us into the state of mind where wisdom can happen. It's the difference between reading a description of fire and actually feeling its heat. His words are the description, but wisdom is the feeling.
Wisdom is the oneness of mind that guides and permeates all things.
And here's another attempt to put words to the thing that is beyond words. In the last fragment, wisdom was the action of the mind beyond all things that may be said. Now, Heraclitus gives that action a name, the oneness of mind.
But the second half of this fragment is the crucial part. It's a oneness of mind that guides and permeates all things. He's not talking about a psychological state inside a person's head. He's describing a cosmic principle. This oneness of mind sounds exactly like his definition of the Logos.
It has to be. The introduction told us the Logos is the holistic logic that upholds all being and guides the cosmoses. This is a perfect restatement of that same idea. So wisdom isn't just understanding the Logos. Wisdom is the Logos. Or at least, it's the human mind coming into alignment with it.
Exactly. It clarifies everything. All his talk about listening, seeing, and seeking is about tuning your individual mind into this universal oneness of mind that's already out there, guiding and permeating the fire and flux of reality.
So the goal isn't to create a clever system in your head. The goal is to achieve a state of resonance with the operating system of the universe itself. To know that all is one is to participate in that oneness. It's a powerful and incredibly ambitious definition of wisdom.
That which always was and is and will be ever-living fire, the same for all, the cosmos, made neither by God nor man, replenishes in measure as it burns away.
Okay, this fragment feels like we've just zoomed all the way out to the widest possible cosmic scale. After defining wisdom as the oneness of mind, he now gives us the object of that wisdom, and it's ever-living fire.
This is the definitive statement on his central metaphor we were told about in the introduction. This fire isn't a substance like water for Thales, it's a process. It always was, and is, and will be. It's eternal. And then he says, it's the cosmos. He's not saying the cosmos is made of fire, he's saying the cosmos is this process of fiery change.
And the most revolutionary part has to be the next line, made neither by God nor man. That is a staggering claim for his time. He is explicitly rejecting any kind of creation myth. The universe wasn't crafted by a divine artisan, nor is its order imposed by human laws or conventions. It is a self-existing, self-ordering system.
Exactly. And the final phrase explains how it's self-ordering. It replenishes in measure as it burns away. That measure is the Logos at work. The change isn't chaotic or destructive. It's a perfectly balanced, self-regulating cycle. The burning away and the replenishment are two sides of the same single process, keeping the whole thing in a state of dynamic equilibrium.
It ties everything together. The oneness he keeps talking about is the oneness of this process. The wisdom he wants us to attain is the perception of this measured, fiery flux that is everything. This is what you see when you finally stop listening to gibberish and start using your eye, the ear, the mind in action. You see the universe as this eternal, living fire.
Fire in its ways of changing is a sea transfigured between forks of lightning and the solid earth.
Wow, that's poetic. A sea transfigured between forks of lightning and the solid earth. He's painting a picture here, but it feels like a cosmic one.
It is, and it connects directly back to what we just established. Wisdom is aligning with the Logos. The Logos is the guiding mind of the cosmos, and the cosmos is an ever-living fire. This fragment seems to be Heraclitus showing us what that fire does.
Right. He's describing the process of change. Fire is the engine, but it doesn't just stay fire, it transforms. He's laying out the classic elements here: fire, water, the sea, earth, and maybe air with the lightning. But he's not presenting them as four equal static substances. He's showing them as phases of a single process that originates with fire.
Exactly. He's saying fire, in its ways of changing, becomes these other things. This is a perfect echo of that fragment Brooks Haxton flagged in the introduction. All things change to fire, and fire exhausted falls back into things. This is the poetic version of that principle. Fire turns into the sea and the earth.
The word transfigured is doing a lot of work there. It's not just changed or becomes. It suggests a more fundamental, almost divine alteration of its very nature. And the forks of lightning feel like the catalyst, the moment of violent, energetic transformation.
It's the tension, the strife. He said that war is the father of all things, and lightning is a pretty good metaphor for that kind of sudden, creative, and destructive force. It's the active principle that mediates the change from the pure energy of fire into the tangible world of sea and earth. It's a perfect little aphorism for his process metaphysics. The reality isn't the substance, sea or earth, it's the fiery, lightning-driven process of becoming.
As all things change to fire, and fire exhausted falls back into things, the crops are sold for money spent on food.
Whoa, okay. As all things change to fire, and fire exhausted falls back into things, that's it. That's the exact line Brooks Haxton quoted in the introduction, the one he compared to Einstein's E=mc².
It is. Heraclitus is stating his grand unified theory of the cosmos as the first clause of the sentence, and then, in the second half, he just goes to the farmer's market.
It's such a jarring but brilliant move. He's taking this massive, abstract cosmological principle and immediately grounding it in the most mundane human activity, commerce, the transformation of crops into money and money back into food.
It's a perfect analogy for his point. The crops are a tangible good, a form of stored energy from the earth. They get converted into money, which is an abstract, universal medium of exchange. It's like the fire of the analogy, a sort of pure potential value.
And then that abstract potential, the money, is exhausted when it falls back into things, when it's used to buy food, another tangible good. So you have this cycle, tangible to abstract and back to tangible.
Exactly. He's showing that the logos, the deep underlying logic of the universe, isn't just some mystical cosmic law. It's the same logic that governs the marketplace. The principle of reciprocal transformation is universal. He's telling us that if you want to understand how the cosmos works, just pay attention to how you buy your dinner.
It's another one of his signs. He's not explaining it. He's just putting the two things side by side, the cosmic and the economic, and forcing you, the reader, to see the shared pattern. That hidden connection is the whole point.
The earth is melted into the sea by that same reckoning whereby the sea sinks into the earth.
And here's the logos again, but in different words. By that same reckoning. That's got to be another way of saying by the same logics or according to the same principle.
I think so too. He's reinforcing the idea from the last fragment. The principle that governs the transformation of crops to money is the same one that governs the transformation of the elements. Here, it's earth and sea.
It's a cycle of balanced exchange. The earth is melted into the sea, you can picture erosion, coastlines changing, and then the sea sinks into the earth, which could be geological processes, or even just evaporation and rainfall over land. The point isn't the specific science of it, but the perfect reciprocity.
Exactly. The amount of earth that becomes sea is measured or balanced by the amount of sea that becomes earth. It's all governed by this one single reckoning. This directly opposes the idea of a stable, underlying substance that his Milesian predecessors were looking for. For Heraclitus, the reality isn't the earth or the sea, it's the balanced, lawful process of them turning into each other.
It's the same pattern over and over, cosmos, commerce, geology. He's showing that this principle of reciprocal transformation, this logos, is everywhere. You can't escape it because it's the fundamental way the world works. The change isn't chaotic, it's ordered and rational. It keeps a ledger, a reckoning.
Hunger even in the elements, and insolence.
Translators note, the usual translation of choros as satiety gives the literal meaning but loses the strong connotation of insolence important to the personifying logic of this and many other fragments.
This translator's note is really the key to the whole fragment. Without it, you'd probably read hunger and satiety, which is the standard translation. That makes sense as a pair of opposites, like everything else we've seen.
Right, hunger and satieties would just be another description of a natural cycle. But Haxton's choice of insolence changes everything. It's a moral term. Satiety is just being full. Insolence is the arrogance that comes from being too full, from having too much. It's the Greek concept of hubris.
Exactly. And Heraclitus applies it even in the elements. He's personifying them. He's saying that one element, like fire, can have a hunger to consume. But if it gets what it wants and becomes dominant, That state of dominance is a kind of insolence, an arrogant overreaching.
And that insolence inevitably invites a correction. The cosmic reckoning, or logos, has to put it back in its place to maintain balance. The sea becomes insolent and tries to flood the land, but the process reverses and the earth reclaims it. It's a system of cosmic justice, not just physics.
And this is where his metaphysics becomes a social critique. By using a word like insolence, he's drawing a direct line between the behavior of the elements and the behavior of powerful people. A king who becomes insolent through too much power will be brought down by that same universal law of balance, often through war or strife. The logic is the same for the cosmos and the city-state.
Air dies giving birth to fire. Fire dies giving birth to air. Water thus is born of dying earth and earth of water.
This is the most direct he's been about the mechanics of the cycle. He's laying it out almost like a formula. Air dies, fire is born, fire dies, air is born.
And he uses that language of death and birth again, making it very dramatic. It's not a gentle transition, it's a fundamental end for one thing that is simultaneously the beginning of another. This is the strife he talks about, the war that is the father of all things, playing out at the elemental level.
It's a perfectly balanced zero-sum process. For fire to exist, air must cease to be air. For earth to exist, water must cease to be water. Nothing is ever just created from nothing or destroyed into nothingness. It's always a transformation, and the price of one element's existence is another's death.
It's also interesting that he separates them into two pairs. Air and fire seem to be one reciprocal pair, and earth and water are another. It's almost like he's describing two different circuits of energy exchange within the larger system.
The celestial and the terrestrial, maybe? Air and fire are the lighter, upper elements, while water and earth are the heavier, lower ones. He's not just saying everything changes. He's describing a specific, structured pattern to that change. The logos isn't just a vague principle. It has specific rules of engagement for how the elements interact. The flux is not a chaotic mess. It's an ordered, lawful, and necessary cycle of death and regeneration.
Fire of all things is the judge and ravisher.
Judge and ravisher. Those are two very powerful, very human words to apply to a cosmic principle. He's really leaning into the personification here. Ravisher is especially shocking.
It is, but it's the pairing that makes it so Heraclitean. The judge part connects directly back to what we've been saying about the logos being a reckoning. Fire is the agent of cosmic justice. It's the standard that measures and determines all things, that enforces the balance.
And the ravisher is the violent, active side of that judgment. It's the strife, the war. Change doesn't happen by polite agreement. It happens by force. Fire consumes, it seizes, it overwhelms. It's the agent of that death and birth cycle we just heard about. It violently takes one thing and transforms it into another.
Exactly. The judgment isn't a passive verdict, it's an active sentence, and the sentence is carried out by force. For Heraclitus, this isn't a contradiction. The law of the cosmos is this violent, creative, destructive process. The judge and the ravisher are one and the same, a perfect unity of opposites. This is the hidden attunement at work. Order and violence are two sides of the same fiery coin.
How, from a fire that never sinks or sets, would you escape?
That's a powerful rhetorical question. It feels like a direct challenge to the listener. He's established that this ever-living fire is the cosmos, the judge, the agent of all change, and now he asks, so where are you going to run?
Exactly, and the answer is clearly nowhere. He specifies it's a fire that never sinks or sets. Unlike the sun, which gives us the illusion of respite when it goes down, this cosmic fire is eternal and omnipresent. It's the operating system of reality. Trying to escape it would be like a fish trying to escape water.
It's the ultimate refutation of the ignorant person's mindset he criticized so harshly at the beginning. Most people live as if they have a private understanding, as if they can carve out a little stable corner of the world that's exempt from the universal law. Heraclitus is saying, that's a delusion, there is no outside.
And if we remember that this fire is also the judge, the question becomes even more pointed. How would you escape judgment? Not human judgment, but the fundamental reckoning of the cosmos that ensures everything is in a state of balanced exchange. You can't cheat the system. The logos is inescapable.
So the only rational response isn't to try and escape the fire, but to learn its nature. The wise person understands they are part of this fiery process, not separate from it. The folly is in the attempt to find an exit. The wisdom is in learning to live within the flames.
One thunderbolt strikes root through everything.
One thunderbolt strikes root through everything. That's an incredible image. A thunderbolt is the most instantaneous, fleeting, violent event you can imagine. And a root is the opposite. It's about slow growth, stability, nourishment, a deep foundation.
He's mashing those two completely opposite ideas together into one. It's another one of his paradoxes designed to show a hidden attunement. The thunderbolt is surely another metaphor for the Logos, for the ever-living fire in its role as governor. In Greek myth, the thunderbolt is the tool of Zeus, the one who steers and orders the cosmos.
So he's saying the principle that steers everything isn't a static law or a fixed substance. It's a sudden, decisive, energetic act. It's a strike. It's the judge and ravisher in a single flash.
But it also strikes root. That's the part that's so brilliant. The act of steering, the violent strike of judgment, isn't just a momentary event that passes. That very act is what creates the deep underlying structure of reality. The process itself is the foundation. The violent change is the permanent order.
So the structure of the cosmos isn't like the foundation of a house that's laid once and then is static. The structure is the continuous, ongoing act of the thunderbolt striking. It's a dynamic stability.
Exactly. It's the ultimate summary of his process metaphysics. The fundamental reality is an event, a fiery process that in its very happening creates the order and interconnectedness of everything. One single, divine, fiery act that both happens in an instant and provides the permanent rooted structure for all of existence. It's the oneness of mind in its most active, powerful form.
No being, not the sun itself, exceeds due measure, but contending powers set things right.
No being, not the sun itself, exceeds due measure. He uses the most powerful, seemingly absolute entity in the ancient world, the sun, to make his point. Even it is bound by this law.
It's the ultimate example. The sun has its path, its seasons. It can't just decide to stay up all night or scorch the earth into oblivion. It is governed by a due measure, and that measure is, once again, the Logos. It's this universal law of balance.
And then he tells us how that measure is enforced. It's not a passive rule, but contending powers set things right. This is the engine of his cosmos. The balance isn't a state of peaceful rest, it's an active, ongoing struggle.
Right? If the sun, hypothetically, were to try and exceed its due measure, other powers in the cosmos would push back. Heat would be met by cold, light by darkness. The balance is maintained through this constant tension, this strife.
This is his doctrine that war is the father of all things in its clearest form yet. The order of the universe, the due measure, isn't imposed from the outside by a static lawgiver. It emerges from the conflict itself. The contending powers, in their very act of struggling against each other, create a dynamic, self-correcting equilibrium. That's the justice of the fire.
Dawn turns to dusk around the pivot of the north. Southward lies the zone of greater light.
Okay, the pivot of the north. That's a new one. After all this talk of fire and thunderbolts and constant flux, he gives us a point of absolute stability.
But that's the genius of it, isn't it? He's not contradicting himself. He's showing us what the Logos is. It's the fixed point around which all the change happens. The stars wheel across the sky, dawn turns to dusk, but they all revolve around this one central, unmoving pivot, the North Star. The flux isn't chaos, it's an ordered rotation.
So the Logos is the axis of the cosmos. The principle of change is itself unchanging. And then the second line sets up the opposition. Southward lies the zone of greater light. So you have this fixed, stable, dark point in the north, and you contrast it with the moving, bright path of the sun in the south.
Yes, it's another set of contending powers. The stability of the pivot and the dynamic energy of the light. The whole system of day and night, of cosmic change, is structured by the relationship between these two poles. It's a perfect little model of his entire philosophy packed into 2 lines. There's constant change, but it's governed by a single, stable principle, and it's all driven by the tension between opposites.
Without the sun, what day, what night?
Translator's note, Jones's literal translation of this fragment is, if there were no sun, there would be night, in spite of the other stars. Because the sense of the Greek seems incomplete, I introduced the questions into my translation, to suggest possible connections with the logic of reversal in fragments 35, 36, and elsewhere.
Okay, whoa, we have to stop and talk about that translator's note. This is a huge admission. Haxton is telling us he completely changed the fragment. The literal Greek is apparently a straightforward statement. If there were no sun, there would be night, in spite of the other stars.
Right. And that literal version makes a simple point about the sun's overwhelming power. It says the sun is the only thing that makes a difference between day and night. The other stars are insignificant by comparison. But Haxton's translation, without the sun, what day, what night, turns it into a profound philosophical question.
It completely changes the focus. His version asks about the meaning of the words themselves. It suggests that the concepts of day and nights are mutually dependent. They only have meaning in relation to each other, as a pair of opposites defined by the presence or absence of the sun. Without one, the other loses its identity.
And he says he's doing it to connect to the logic of reversals he sees elsewhere in Heraclitus. This is that core idea that opposites define one another. You can't understand health without sickness or peace without war. So, if the sun disappeared, the constant darkness wouldn't be nights anymore because there would be no day for it to be the opposite of. It would just be.
This is a perfect illustration of the challenge of reading Heraclitus. We are actively seeing the translator's hand at work, shaping the text to fit a coherent interpretation of the whole philosophy. Haxton is choosing to emphasize the philosophical system over the literal text of a single, possibly corrupted fragment. It makes for a more consistently Heraclitean reading, but it's a good reminder that we're always reading through an interpreter.
The sun is new again, all day.
Wow, that's the river fragment, but for the sky. The sun is new again all day. It's so simple, but so radical. He's not just saying there's a new sun every morning, he says it's new all day.
Exactly, it's the ultimate statement of his flux doctrine. The thing we perceive as the most stable, most permanent object in our experience, the thing that orders our lives, Heraclitus says it's in a state of constant, moment-to-moment regeneration. This is Panta Re, everything flows, applied to the heavens.
So the sun isn't an object for him, it's an event, it's a process that is continuously happening. This must be what he means by the ever-living fire. The fire is the eternal process, and the sun we see is just that process becoming visible, constantly being reborn from that underlying cosmic source.
Right, and it's another one of his jabs at the unenlightened. We see a single, enduring object crossing the sky. But the logos, the deep reality of the situation, is one of constant flux and renewal. To see a stable thing where there is actually a continuous process is to be asleep to the nature of reality. Wisdom, then, is to understand that even the sun is a river.
The mind of Thales saw in forethought, clearly as in heaven, the eclipse.
Well, that's a change of tone. After dismissing poets and other big-name thinkers, Heraclitus actually seems to be praising someone. He's giving Thales credit for a major intellectual achievement.
It's definitely a notable shift, but I think we have to look at what he's praising. He's not praising Thales for creating a system or having a lot of knowledge. He's praising him for one specific act of insight, seeing the eclipse in forethought.
Right? Thales understood the process. He saw the underlying order, the due measures that governs the heavens, so clearly that he could predict a future event. This is the logos in action. Thales was able to align his mind with the cosmic reckoning.
Exactly. And look at that phrasing, clearly as in heaven. It's beautiful. It implies that Thales' mind achieved a state of clarity that was equivalent to the clarity of the cosmic order itself. For a moment, his mind became a mirror for the logos.
So this isn't a blanket endorsement of everything Thales ever thought. Heraclitus is using him as a very specific example. Unlike the people who just collect facts or repeat stories, Thales engaged in the kind of difficult, direct observation that reveals the hidden patterns of the cosmos. He looked at the sun, the very thing Heraclitus just told us is new again, all day, and he saw the unchanging law within its constant change.
It's a rare compliment, and that makes it powerful. He's holding up this specific achievement as a model for the kind of wisdom he's talking about, not accumulating information, but achieving a state of mind so attuned to the cosmic process that you can see how it works.
The sun, timekeeper of the day and season, oversees all things.
Okay, so after praising Thales for predicting an eclipse, Heraclitus now explains why that kind of foresight is possible. The sun isn't just a random ball of fire, it's the timekeeper. It has a predictable, lawful nature.
And it's more than just a clock. The phrase oversees all things is huge. It elevates the sun to the role of a cosmic governor, an enforcer. This connects right back to the fire being the judge. The sun is the most obvious, powerful manifestation of that cosmic fire, and here Heraclitus is telling us it's in charge. It's the visible agent of the logos.
But this brings up that amazing tension with his earlier fragment, the sun is new again all day. How can something that is in a state of constant renewal, never the same from one moment to the next, also be the reliable timekeepers that oversees all things?
That's the heart of his philosophy, isn't it? The order, the law, is not found in a static object. The order is the perfectly regular, perfectly lawful process of change. The sun is a reliable timekeeper because its process of becoming new is constant and unchanging. The stability is the flux itself. It oversees everything precisely because it is the most perfect, visible embodiment of this eternal fiery process.
Many who have learned from Hesiod the countless names of gods and monsters never understand that night and day are one.
Translator's note. This rough paraphrase introduces the mention of gods and monsters to clarify the distinction between the polymorphous concreteness of Hesiod and the unifying abstract thought Heraclitus preferred.
And here we go again. After that brief moment of praise for Thales, Heraclitus is back to dismissing the heavyweights. This time, it's Hesiod, one of the foundational poets of Greek culture.
It's his favorite move, isn't it? But the critique here is so precise. It's not just that Hesiod is wrong, it's that the kind of knowledge he represents is a dead end. The translator's note really spells it out for us. Hesiod gives you polymorphous concreteness, a giant list of all the different gods and monsters.
It's the ultimate example of polymathy, of knowing many things, which Heraclitus despises. You can memorize the entire theogony, name every single divine being, and still be completely blind to the most fundamental truth, that night and day are one.
Exactly. You're lost in the weeds. You have 1,000 data points, but you can't see the one simple, unifying principle that governs them all. The wisdom isn't in knowing the names, nights, and days as two separate entities on a list. The wisdom is in understanding the single process of which they are two phases.
And again, we have to appreciate the translator being so upfront. Haxton admits he's paraphrasing and added the gods and monsters part to really hammer home that distinction between Hesiod's cataloging and Heraclitus's unifying abstract thought.
It shows how important that distinction is to the whole project. Heraclitus is arguing that true understanding is about grasping the underlying logic, the logos. It's about seeing the unity in the opposition. Hesiod's students have all the facts, but they've completely missed the point. They see a duality, where the wise person sees a unity.
By cosmic rule, as day yields night, so winter, summer, war, peace, plenty, famine, all things change. Fire penetrates the lump of myrrh until the joining bodies die and rise again in smoke called incense.
Translator's note, the exact phrasing of the original Greek is difficult, but scholars agree about the general sense. I have simplified the second half, which says literally that fire mixed with various spices assumes various names.
And here's the explanation. After calling out the followers of Hesiod for not understanding that night and day are one, he immediately shows them how it works. It's all part of this single cosmic rule.
It is. He lays out the master pattern again. Day yields to night, winter to summer, and then he slips in war to peace and plenty to famine. He's constantly weaving the natural and the human together. The same law that governs the seasons governs the fate of cities. It's all one process.
Then he gives us this incredible little scene with the myrrh. Fire penetrates the lump of myrrh until the joining bodies die and rise again in smoke called incense. This is his whole cosmology in a single image. Fire, the agent of change, combines with a thing, myrrh, and in their interaction, both are destroyed to create something completely new.
The language is so powerful. The joining bodies die and rise again. It's not a simple chemical reaction, it's a death and a resurrection. The myrrh is no longer myrrh, the fire is no longer just fire, and what emerges is incense, a new being with a new name and a new nature. This is the war between elements giving birth to a new reality.
But we have to look at the note here. Haxton is telling us he's simplified it. The literal Greek says fire mixed with various spices assumes various names. That's less dramatic, but it might be even more profound.
I think you're right. The literal version makes a very sharp philosophical point. The underlying reality is always the fire, the process. But when that process interacts with myrrh, we call the result incense. When it interacts with cinnamon, we give it another name. The names we give things, the separate identities we perceive, are just temporary labels for different states of the one underlying fiery process.
Exactly. So Heraclitus is saying that what we think of as stable objects, incense, smoke, myrrhs, are really just fire in disguise. It's a radical attack on substance. The reality is the verb, the mixing, not the noun, the spice. Whether we read Haxton's version or the literal one, the core message is that all things are just phases in a constant, fiery transformation.
If everything were turned to smoke, the nose would be the seat of judgment.
What a strange and vivid image. If everything were turned to smoke, he's taking his own cosmology, his idea of fire transforming everything, to its absolute limit. He's asking us to imagine a universe where our primary sense, sight, is completely useless.
Exactly. And in that world, our primary tool for understanding, for making sense of reality, would have to change. The seat of judgment would shift from the eyes to the nose. He's exploring the nature of perception itself.
And that word judgment is key. He means discernment, the ability to tell things apart. In a world that looks completely uniform, it's all just smoke. The nose would be the only way to perceive the differences. You'd have to smell the memory of what was a cedar tree versus what was a stone.
I think it's a metaphor for how we should approach reality now. Most people, he would argue, judge by appearances, by sight. They see a world of distinct, stable objects. But Heraclitus says that's an illusion. Everything is really just a temporary state of the one cosmic fire. In his smoke world, that truth is made literal.
So the wise person is the one who can smell the underlying differences even when everything looks the same. They don't just rely on the obvious sense. They have a more refined tool for judgment, one that can perceive the different flavors of the logos within the apparent chaos or uniformity of the flux.
It's another critique of the common way of thinking. He's saying our senses can be reliable, he's praised them before, but only if we know which sense to use and understand that the apparent reality isn't the whole story. You have to be able to judge the smoke, not just be lost in the fog.
Thus, in the abysmal dark, the soul is known by scent.
Thus, there it is. He's making the connection absolutely explicit. He's taking that thought experiment from the last fragment, the world turned to smoke, and immediately applying it.
He is. The abysmal dark is the smoke-filled world. It's a condition of profound obscurity where our usual senses, especially sight, are useless. And in that state of confusion, he says, you can still perceive the most fundamental thing, the soul.
And you perceive it by scent. This is a huge shift. We've gone from cosmology and perception in general, and now we're focused on psychology, on judging the nature of a person. What could the scent of a soul even be?
It has to connect back to what we know he thinks about the soul. The context mentioned that for Heraclitus, dry, the soul grows wise and good, while the moist soul is foolish. The scent must be a metaphor for that inner state, its quality.
Of course. A dry, fiery soul, a wise soul that is aligned with the logos, would give off a certain scent, like the incense he just mentioned. A damp, sluggish, foolish soul would give off another, maybe something musty or cold.
Exactly. So in the abysmal dark of ordinary human ignorance, where everyone's words and actions can be misleading, the wise person doesn't judge by appearances. They use this deeper, more intuitive faculty, this is scent, to discern the true character, the inner fire of another soul. It's a method for navigating a world where things keep their secrets.
What was cold soon warms, and warmth soon cools, so moisture dries and dry things drown.
This feels like Heraclitus just laying his cards on the table. No more metaphors about incense or thunderbolts. Just the raw principle, everything turns into its opposite.
Exactly. This is the proof for his critique of Hesiod. He said they don't understand that night and day are one, and this is how they are, one. They aren't two separate things, they are two poles in a single continuous process of transformation. Cold doesn't just exist, it exists on its way to becoming warm. Warmth exists on its way to becoming cold.
And then he brings in moisture and dryness, which we know is his central metaphor for the soul. Moisture dries and dry things drown. That's not just about the weather. That feels like a direct statement about our inner lives.
It has to be. He's already established that the dry soul grows wise and good, so this is a warning. The state of wisdom isn't a final destination you arrive at, it's a dynamic state. The wise dry soul is always in a process, always at risk of drowning, becoming moist, foolish, complacent. The same cosmic rule of reversal applies to our character.
So the struggle is constant. The tension is perpetual. Just as warmth must fight off cold, the wise soul must constantly work to maintain its dryness against the pull of moisture. The law of flux is universal, from the elements to the soul.
What was scattered gathers, what was gathered blows apart.
That's just pure Heraclitus. The entire philosophy in 8 words. It's so simple and perfectly symmetrical, a cosmic inhale and exhale.
Exactly. What was scattered gathers, that's the drive toward unity, the impulse behind the logos that all is one. But he immediately reminds us that this unity is never a final, stable state. The cosmic rule demands the other half of the process. What was gathered blows apart. That's the strife, the war, the fire in action.
Right, the blowing apart isn't a mistake or an accident in the system. It's a fundamental, necessary part of the cosmic rule. It's the engine that clears the way for the next phase of gathering. He's saying the universe is in a constant state of assembling and disassembling itself.
And that applies to absolutely everything, from the elements to empires. A body gathers its strength, and then age scatters it. A civilization gathers its power, and then it fragments. The goal isn't to achieve a permanent state of gatheredness, because that's impossible. The wisdom is to understand that you are living inside this constant dynamic rhythm of creation and dissolution.
The river where you set your foot just now is gone, those waters giving way to this, now this.
Translator's note, this, the most famous fragment, is usually translated, you cannot step in the same river twice. According to Plutarch, Heraclitus says, you cannot step into the same rivers twice. My rephrasing tries to clear away distractingly familiar language from a startling thought. It seems unlikely to my mind that the ancient authors who refer to this idea quote Heraclitus exactly.
Ah, the greatest hit. This must be the most famous philosophical fragment of all time. But I love what the translator Haxton does here.
Me too. He explicitly notes that he's rephrasing it to clear away distractingly familiar language from a startling thought. And it works. You cannot step in the same river twice has become a sort of platitude, but the river where you set your foot just now is gone. Those waters giving way to this, now this, that, has a much more immediate, poetic, and frankly disorienting feel.
It really does. It captures the process. It's not just that the river you come back to tomorrow is different, it's that the river is different in the very instant you are in it. The now this at the end is brilliant. It emphasizes that constant, relentless replacement. This is the absolute core of his teaching that nothing is stable and all is in constant flux.
It's the perfect companion piece to the earlier fragment, the sun is new again, all day. Both ideas attack our intuitive sense of stable objects. We look at the sun and think, same sun. We look at the river and think, same river. But Heraclitus is forcing us to see that what we perceive as a stable substance is actually a stable pattern of change. It's process metaphysics in a nutshell.
And this is why the logos is so important. Without the logos, this constant flux would just be chaos. But the river remains a river, even though the water is always different. The sun remains the sun, even though it's new again. The logos is that underlying principle, that cosmic rule, that ensures the change is orderly and patterned. The stability isn't in the stuff, it's in the rule that governs how the stuff changes.
It's also interesting that the translator notes that it's unlikely the ancient authors who quoted this idea got it exactly right. It's another reminder that we're always reading Heraclitus through the lens of others, like Plato or the Stoics who used his work for their own purposes.
Right, so even the most famous fragment we have comes with a giant asterisk. We're not just interpreting Heraclitus, we're interpreting layers of historical interpretation. But the core idea, in whichever phrasing you prefer, is unmistakable. Reality is not a noun, it's a verb.
Omitted, C note, translator's note. Here Stobaeus quotes Arius Didymus's report of what Cleanthes thought about what Heraclitus said. I have omitted this as a less interesting and less reliable version of the same passage as reported by Plutarch in Fragment 41.
Wow. Okay, so we don't even get a fragment here, just a note explaining its omission, and the reason is incredible.
It really is. Let me see if I can trace the chain of custody on this one. Stobaeus is quoting a report from Arius Didymus about what Cleanthes thought Heraclitus said. That's a game of telephone played across several centuries and philosophical schools.
Exactly. And it's such a clear example of what the introduction warned us about. These fragments come to us through filters, people who weren't just preserving Heraclitus, but interpreting him for their own purposes. Cleanthes was a Stoic, his whole project was different.
Right, so the translator, Haxton, makes an editorial decision here. He calls this version less interesting and less reliable than the one from Plutarch that he used for the previous fragment, the famous one about the river. He's actively curating our experience of Heraclitus, and I think that's the right call. It prevents us from getting bogged down in a distorted echo.
It's a powerful choice. It shows that putting together a collection like this isn't just about translation. It's about textual criticism and making judgments about authenticity. The omission of this fragment speaks volumes about the very nature of Heraclitus's surviving work. In a way, the absence here is just as instructive as a fragment would have been.
The poet was a fool who wanted no conflict among us, gods or people. Harmony needs low and high, as progeny needs man and woman.
He is not subtle, is he? The poet was a fool. This lines up perfectly with his earlier dismissal of figures like Hesiod. He has no time for what he sees as a naive or sentimental worldview.
None at all. And he lays out his reasoning so clearly. The poet's wish to eliminate conflict is foolish because it would eliminate existence itself. For Heraclitus, harmony isn't a state of peaceful, static rest. It's an active, tense, dynamic balance of opposites.
Right. His analogies are so grounded and powerful. You can't have musical harmony without the tension between low and high's notes, and you can't have life, progeny, without the coming together of man and woman. This is the hidden attunement the introduction told us to look for. It's not found by getting rid of opposites, but by understanding how they work together.
This is the philosophical underpinning for that fragment we saw earlier, war, as father of all things, and king, PMA. He's not just saying that strife happens, he's saying it is a necessary generative principle. If that poet got his wish and all conflicts ceased, the cosmos would collapse into a single, undifferentiated, dead thing.
It's a complete reversal of our usual thinking. We see conflict as a disruption of a peaceful norm. Heraclitus argues that the war between opposites is the norm, that ongoing tension is what creates and sustains the world. The poet's wish isn't a wish for peace, it's a wish for oblivion.
Which makes this a deep psychological critique as well. To wish for a world without struggle is to fail to understand the very nature of life. Wisdom, for Heraclitus, seems to involve recognizing this necessity and finding the unity within that constant opposition.
War, as father of all things and king, names few to serve as gods, and of the rest makes these men slaves, those free.
And there it is. Right after telling us the poet who wants no conflict is a fool, Heraclitus gives that principle a name, war. War, as father of all things and king. This is one of his most powerful and unsettling statements.
It is. The choice of father and king is so specific. Father suggests it's a generative, creative force. It's what brings things into being. And king implies it's the ruling, ordering principle. It's not chaos, it's the law of the cosmos. This is the harmony achieved through tension and strife that was mentioned in the summary.
Exactly. And then he immediately applies this cosmic principle to the human, social world. This same force of war names few to serve as gods, and of the rest makes these men slaves, those free. It's a force of differentiation. It assigns roles. It creates the very distinctions that make up the social order.
This feels directly connected to the trenchant social critique and political elitism we were told about in the introduction. The struggle, whether it's on the battlefield or in the mind, is what separates people. It reveals their nature. Some are elevated by it almost to the status of gods, while others are defined by it as either free or enslaved.
It's the ultimate meritocracy, but the merit is understanding the logos itself. To be frees in the Heraclitean sense is to understand the nature of this cosmic war. To be a slave is to be ignorant of it, to be battered by the forces of change without ever comprehending the principle behind them. So for Heraclitus, this isn't a lamentable state of affairs, it's the fundamental law that structures all of reality.
The mind, to think of the accord that strains against itself, needs strength, as does the arm to string the bow or lyre.
The metaphors here are just perfect. The bow and the lyre, both are objects that are completely useless, even meaningless, until they are put under immense strain.
Exactly. A slack bow is just a stick with a string, a loose lyre string is silent. Their power, their function, their very identity comes from being in a state of tension. The harmony of the lyre and the power of the bow are the accord that strains against itself. The strain isn't a flaw, it's the entire point.
And he's saying the mind has to do the same thing. To understand his philosophy, to grasp the logos, you can't be mentally slack. You have to have the intellectual strength to hold opposing ideas together in your mind without letting them collapse. You have to feel the strain of war and peace, or night and day being one.
This is a direct shot at the people he calls the walking dead. They lack this mental strength. They want simple, easy, non-contradictory answers. Heraclitus is saying that kind of thinking is as useless as an unstrung bow. True thought requires effort, tension, and the strength to maintain that tension.
It's the active, difficult work of interpretation we were told to expect. He's not just presenting ideas, he's demanding a certain kind of mental fitness from his reader. He's saying, if this feels hard, good. It's supposed to be. Now, pull harder. 1. Now, pull harder.
From the strain of binding opposites comes harmony.
If the last fragment was the instruction, this is the axiom. It's the core principle stated as plainly as he's capable of.
It really is. It feels like the philosophical center of gravity for everything we just read. The bow and lyre from the last fragment, the foolish poet who wanted no conflict, the idea of war as a generative force, it all funnels into this single, powerful sentence.
The key words are strain and binding. Harmony for Heraclitus isn't a passive state of agreement. It's an active, forceful binding of things that are pulling away from each other. The harmony is the product of that struggle.
Exactly. Without the strain, there's nothing, just a slack rope. It's the tension that makes the structure hold. This is the logos at work, not eliminating opposition, but organizing it into a coherent, though constantly straining, whole.
The harmony past knowing sounds more deeply than the known.
Oh, that's a beautiful line. After the very physical, almost violent metaphors of war and strained bows, he gives us this much quieter, more mystical thought.
It feels like a direct contrast. The known harmony is the obvious kind. It's the sound of a lyre playing a pleasant tune. It's the simple, surface-level order that people who are asleep perceive.
Exactly. But the harmony past knowing is the hidden one, the hidden attunement we were told to look for. It's the principle that the tension in the lyre's string is what makes the music possible in the first place. It's the realization that the opposites are secretly working together.
And it sounds more deeply. It resonates. It's a profound truth, not a superficial one. Heraclitus is saying that the most important principles of the cosmos are not immediately accessible to our senses or our conventional learning. They're paradoxical. You have to listen for them in a different way.
This is why he says, things keep their secrets. The ultimate truth, the logos, isn't something you can just write down and memorize. It's an understanding that you have to arrive at through this difficult mental work. The known harmony is easy. The harmony past knowing is wisdom.
Yet let's not make rash guesses our most lucid thoughts.
After that beautiful, almost mystical line about the harmony past knowing, this feels like a sudden brake pedal. It's a warning.
It's a crucial clarification, isn't it? He's just told us that the deepest truths are hidden and sound different from the known. The immediate danger of hearing that is to think that any wild, unsubstantiated idea is profound. Oh, it's counterintuitive, so it must be true.
Exactly. And he's saying, no, not so fast. Let's not make rash guesses our most lucid thoughts. He's drawing a very clear line between the difficult work of grasping a deep paradoxical truth and the lazy indulgence of a rash guess.
This goes right back to the strength needed to string the bow. A rash guess requires no strength. It's intellectually slack. Lucid thought, for Heraclitus, must be earned through that mental strain. It's not just about rejecting the obvious, it's about rigorously pursuing the hidden logic, the logos.
So, while he wants us to question conventional wisdom and listen for the deeper harmony, he's also warning us not to become fools of a different kind, the kind who mistake their own uninformed hunches for profound insight. It's a call for intellectual discipline in the midst of exploring paradox.
Seekers of wisdom first need sound intelligence.
Well, this follows perfectly from the last fragment. First, he warns us not to mistake rash guesses for lucid thoughts, and now he tells us what the actual starting point is.
Right. It's a prerequisite. Before you can even begin the search for wisdom, you need sound intelligence. This really clarifies his position. He isn't anti-intellectual, he's against a misuse of intelligence.
Exactly. He's not advocating for some kind of thoughtless mysticism where you just abandon reason. He's saying that reason, or sound intelligence, is the necessary foundation. It's the tool you bring to the job, but it's not the job itself.
This helps us understand his attacks on people like Hesiod. He doesn't think Hesiod is stupid. He thinks Hesiod's intelligence is misapplied. It's used for cataloging things, for accumulating facts, but it never makes the leap to understanding the underlying principle, the logos. That requires something more than just intelligence. It requires wisdom.
So there's a clear progression. Sound intelligence is the starting block, seeking is the race, and wisdom is the finish line. And he seems to imply that many people with sound intelligence never even start the race. They just stay at the block, admiring their own intellect, but never applying it to the difficult task of understanding the harmony past knowing.
Under the comb, the tangle and the straight path are the same.
What a fantastic everyday image. After all the talk of war and kings and the cosmos, he brings it down to a comb and a tangle of hair.
It's perfect, though. The tangle is the apparent chaos of the world, the constant flux. The straight path is the order we perceive. And for the comb, which is the force acting on them, they aren't two different things. The tangle is just the potential for the straight path. It's the raw material for order.
And the comb itself must be a metaphor for the logos, right? It's that universal principle, that cosmic rule, that moves through existence and creates patterns. And it's an act of strain, just like he said with the bow and the lyre. You have to pull the comb through the tangle to create the straight path.
Exactly. So, under the comb, from the perspective of the universal law, chaos and order aren't opposites. They're just two phases of the same single process. The logos is the combing action that continuously turns the tangle of reality into the straight path of the moment, which will inevitably become tangled again. It's his whole cosmology in one simple, elegant metaphor.
It really shows how he saw that same principle operating at every single level, from the grandest cosmic scale down to the most mundane personal action. It's another example of him grounding these huge ideas in tangible experience.
An ass prefers a bed of litter to a golden throne.
Heraclitus is quoted as saying, "An ass prefers straw or refuse to gold." Aristotle, who takes this to refer to food, does not say whether the reference to food is explicit in the original or his own inference.
Another animal insult. Heraclitus really does not pull his punches. It's so simple and so scathing.
It is, and the note from the translator adds an interesting layer. The original might have just been straw to gold, with Aristotle inferring it was about food. But whether it's about food or a place to sleep, the point is the same. Value is relative to the nature of the creature. An ass has no use for gold. It prefers what is useful and satisfying to its own nature.
And of course, the asses is a stand-in for the unenlightened masses he's been criticizing this whole time. They are the ones who prefer the litter of their conventional beliefs, their sensory experiences, and their hearsay from poets over the golden throne of wisdom and understanding the logos.
Exactly. The golden throne is completely useless to them. It offers no immediate comfort, no satisfaction of appetite. In the same way, the logos, this difficult, paradoxical truth, offers nothing to the person living an unexamined life. They prefer the familiar comfort of their ignorance.
It's another powerful expression of his elitism. He's not just saying that people choose ignorance, he's saying that for many, their very nature makes them incapable of recognizing wisdom. They're like a different species. The value system is incommensurable. You can't explain the value of gold to an ass, and you can't explain the logos to a fool.
The sea is both pure and tainted, healthy and good haven to the fish, to men impotable and deadly.
This feels like a much more elegant and less insulting version of the last fragment. The logic is identical to the ass preferring litter to gold, but now it's applied to the natural world.
It's the same principle, but it clarifies something important. It's not just about subjective preference. For a fish, the sea is objectively pure and healthy. That is a fact of its reality. For a human, the sea is objectively deadly if you try to drink it or breathe it. That is a fact of our reality.
And the sea itself contains both of these opposing truths simultaneously. It doesn't change. Its nature is fixed, but its effect, its reality for another being, is completely contradictory depending on the nature of that being.
Exactly. This is the unity of opposites in its clearest form. The sea is one thing, but it is both life and death. The harmony past knowing is the ability to see this, not as a contradiction to be solved, but as the fundamental nature of the thing itself. The wise person understands the sea is both. The fool only sees the aspect that affects them at the moment.
Poultry bathe in dust and ashes, swine in filth.
Translator's note, this fragment, like fragments 89 and 120, exists only in a Latin paraphrase of the Greek.
And there's the third beat in this rhythm. First the ass, then the sea, and now poultry and swine. He's really hammering this point about the relativity of value.
He is. And again, he uses these very earthy, almost crude examples. What we consider the definition of filth is, for these animals, a form of bathing and comfort. The same substance embodies opposite qualities. Purity for one, impurity for another.
It reinforces that concepts like pure and tainted aren't inherent in the thing itself, the dust, the mud, the sea, but are a product of the relationship between that thing and the creature experiencing it.
And the translator's note adds another layer of caution. This fragment only exists as a Latin paraphrase of the Greek, so we're even further removed from the original source. We're not just dealing with a quotation, but a restatement in a different language.
It's a constant reminder of the nature of this text. We're interpreting echoes. But even in this echo, the core Heraclitean idea, the unity of opposites, the relativity of perspective, comes through loud and clear.
Omitted as repetition of 53. Translator's note, this fragment is omitted as repetition of the second part of 53.
And another one gets the axe. This is the second fragment the translator has chosen to omit entirely.
It is, but for a very different and telling reason. The first omission, fragment 42, was cut because it was a highly unreliable third-hand account. This one is cut simply for being a repetition of the second part of 53.
It tells you something about the translator's goal. He's not trying to create a complete scholarly archive of every single attested line, no matter how redundant. He's crafting a coherent philosophical text for the reader. He's decided we've gotten the point about animals finding pleasure in what humans see as filth, and he's moving us along.
It also suggests that Heraclitus himself probably relied heavily on these kinds of pithy, illustrative, and repetitive examples in his own teaching. But for the purpose of a written collection, where the reader can easily refer back, Haxton is making the judgment that the repetition isn't necessary and might even dull the impact. It's another conscious choice to shape our reading experience.
Hungry livestock, though in sight of pasture, need the prod.
And the animal metaphors just keep coming. After the ass, swine, and poultry, we now get hungry livestock.
But this one has a slightly different flavor. The others were about having the wrong values, preferring litter to gold. This one is about pure inertia. The pasture, which represents truth or wisdom, is right there in sight. The need, hunger, is present, and yet they do nothing.
It's a powerful metaphor for the human condition as he sees it. The logos is ever present. The truth is available to be seen, but people are so passive, so intellectually lazy, that they will essentially starve in a field of plenty unless they are forced to act.
And that's where the prod comes in. The prod is the necessary external stimulus. It's a jolt, and I think Heraclitus sees his own philosophy as that prod. His sharp, obscure, and often insulting aphorisms are designed to be uncomfortable. They're not a gentle offering of food. They're a poke in the ribs to get the lazy animal to move its feet and start thinking for itself.
The cosmos works by harmony of tensions, like the lyre and bow.
Well, if ever there was a thesis statement for the last dozen fragments, this is it. He's taking the specific metaphor he gave us earlier, the lyre and bow, and elevating it to a universal law for the entire cosmos.
He is. It's almost a perfect echo of fragment 45 where he said the mind needs strength like the arm that strings the bow. Now he's saying the cosmos itself is that strung bow, held in a state of productive tension. It's the principle from Fragment 46, from the strain of binding opposites comes harmony, but writ large across all of existence.
Exactly. So this is the war that is the father of all things. It's the principle that allows the sea to be both deadly and life-giving at the same time. The cosmos doesn't just contain tensions, it works by them. The tension is the engine, not a flaw in the machine.
Right. This is the harmony past knowing made explicit. It's the answer to the foolish poet who wanted to eliminate conflict. Heraclitus is saying, if you eliminated the tension, you wouldn't get peace, you'd get nothing. The lyre would go silent, the bow would go slack, and the cosmos itself would cease to exist.
Therefore, good and ill are one.
And there it is. The therefore. This is the logical punchline to everything we've just read. If the cosmos works by a harmony of tensions, therefore, good and ill are one.
Exactly. It's the ultimate generalization. He took us from the lyre to the sea that is both healthy and deadly, to the swine that bathes in filth, and now he states the abstract principle in the most direct and challenging way possible. Good and ill are not two separate forces fighting it out. They are two sides of the same coin.
It's so much more radical than saying day and night are one. That's a physical observation. This is a direct challenge to the foundations of ethics and human values. For Heraclitus, what we call ill, strife, war, tension, struggle is the generative force of the cosmos. So from the perspective of the whole, it can't be purely ill, it's necessary.
Lighter. Don't want. It doesn't mean that from our human perspective there's no difference between health and sickness or peace and war. It means that from the perspective of the Logos, these opposites are inseparable and mutually necessary. You can't have the concept of good without the concept of ill. They define each other and exist in that constant state of tension that Heraclitus says is the nature of all things.
Good and ill to the physician surely must be one, since he derives his fee from torturing the sick.
And right after stating that massive, abstract principle, he brings it down to earth with a very specific and characteristically provocative example.
It's perfect. He's not just being cynical here, calling surgery or medicine torturing the sick. He's pointing to a fundamental truth of the profession. The act of healing often requires inflicting pain. Setting a broken bone hurts. Cauterizing a wound is agonizing. The ill of the treatment is inseparable from the good of the cure.
Exactly. From the perspective of the physician, the painful process and the healing outcome are not two separate things. They are two parts of a single act. The physician's entire profession exists within that tension. Their fee, their livelihood, is predicated on the existence of illness and the often painful process of resolving it.
So this isn't just a clever jab at doctors. For Heraclitus, this is evidence. It's a microcosm of his entire cosmology. Just as the cosmos works by the harmony of tensions, the practice of medicine works by the unity of good and ill. It's another proof that his universal law applies to every facet of existence, from the stars down to the operating table.
Two made one are never one. Arguing the same, we disagree. Singing together, we compete. We choose each other to be one, and from the one, both soon diverge.
Wow. After the series on animals and the physician, this one feels much more personal, more psychological. It's about human relationships and interaction, and that opening line is a killer paradox. Two made one are never one.
It is. It feels like the direct application of the bow and lyre principle to human connection. When you string the bow, the wood and the string become a single functional unit, a one, but they never stop being two distinct things straining against each other. Heraclitus is saying the same is true for people.
And his examples are so sharp. Arguing the same, we disagree. The very act of engaging in a single argument is predicated on the two participants holding opposing views. The unity of the conversation is created by the tension of their disagreement.
Exactly. And singing together we compete. It's brilliant. Even in a choir, an act of supreme harmony, there's an underlying individual striving. The whole is made of competing parts. For Heraclitus, this isn't a cynical observation. It's just a description of how things work. The harmony doesn't erase the competition. It's produced by it.
And that final sentence ties it all into his process metaphysics. We choose each other to be one, and from the one both soon diverge. Unity is not a permanent static state. It's a temporary phase in a constant cycle of coming together and pulling apart. A relationship, a friendship, an alliance for Heraclitus, these are like the river. They are patterns of change, not fixed entities. The divergence is as natural and necessary as the coming together.
Without injustices, the name of justice would mean what?
Translator's note, I have introduced a question here to compensate for a vagueness that seems to come from loss of context.
This is such a sharp, powerful question. It takes the principle from the last few fragments and applies it directly to ethics. He's saying the very concept of justice is meaningless by itself. It's an empty word unless you have its opposite, injustice, to give it definition.
It is, but what's fascinating is the translator's note. Heraclitus might not have asked a question at all. Haxton says, I have introduced a question here to compensate for a vagueness that seems to come from loss of context. He's admitting that he shaped the fragment to make its point clearer.
And I think it's a brilliant choice. It makes it so much more dynamic. It forces you, the reader, to answer it and realize the interdependence of the two. It's another example of the text demanding that active interpretation we talked about. You have to experience the tension in the concepts yourself.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of his whole philosophy. We saw it with the sea being pure and tainted, with the physician's cure being a kind of torture. Now he's applying it to the highest level of human abstraction, ethics, and law. The concept of justice is born from the strain of its opposition to injustice. Without that tension, the word itself collapses.
While cosmic wisdom understands all things are good and just, intelligence may find injustice here and justice somewhere else.
Okay, so this fragment seems to draw a very sharp line. He's making a distinction between cosmic wisdom and intelligence.
It feels like a direct conclusion to everything we just discussed. The cosmic wisdom is the perspective that understands the unity of opposites we've been tracing. It's the view from the Logos, which sees how war and peace, justice and injustice are all part of one single, necessary process.
Right. So from the perspective of the whole cosmos, everything is as it should be. It's good and just. But our limited human intelligence, as he calls it, can't see that. We're stuck in the particular. We stand in one spot and say, this thing over here is an injustice, and that thing over there is justice.
It's exactly like the metaphors of the ass preferring litter to gold, or the sea being pure for fish but deadly for humans. Our judgment of what is just is relative to our own limited position. Heraclitus is saying that what we call justice and injustice are just local phenomena, but the cosmic law, the Logos, encompasses and harmonizes both.
It's a pretty radical statement. He's essentially saying our entire framework for morality is a product of a limited viewpoint. That cosmic wisdom doesn't see good and evil, it just sees the necessary tension that makes up the whole.
Yes, and it reinforces his elitism, doesn't it? Most people are stuck with their partial intelligence, but the wise person strives for that cosmic wisdom, to see things from the perspective of the whole, to understand the oneness of mind that guides and permeates all things.
Justice in our minds is strife. We cannot help but see war makes us as we are.
He's doubling down. After saying our intelligence can only see partial justice, he now defines what that human justice is. For Heraclitus, justice in our minds is strife.
Exactly. Our very concept of justice is born from conflict. It's a system for managing strife, which means it can't exist without it. If everyone agreed and everything was in placid harmony, the word justice would have no function, no meaning.
It directly echoes his earlier fragment about how the name of justice would be unknown if there were no such thing as injustice. It's not an ideal state of peace, it's a concept that operates entirely within the field of conflict.
And then that second line is so blunt, we cannot help but see war makes us as we are. He's taking the grand cosmological principle that war is the father of all things and bringing it right down to the personal and social level.
He's saying our identities, our societies, our hierarchies, all of it is a product of struggle. The peace we might long for isn't our natural state. Our state is one of becoming, of being forged in the tension and strife he sees as the engine of reality. To wish for an end to strife is to wish for an end to ourselves as we know us.
Thus are things decreed by fate.
Thus are things decreed by fate. Well, that's a mic drop if I've ever heard one. It feels like a final stamp on the last two fragments.
It really does. After explaining that our entire concept of justice is born from strife, and that war makes us who we are, he just closes the case. This isn't a theory for him, it's a fundamental, unchangeable law of the cosmos.
And I think it's important to understand what he means by fate. It's not some arbitrary plan set by the gods. For Heraclitus, fate must be the Logos. It's the inescapable, rational principle that governs reality.
Exactly. The decree of fate is the law of constant change through strife. The harmony that comes from the tension of the bow and the lyre isn't an accident, it's the fundamental, decreed nature of existence. He's saying this isn't negotiable. This is how the universe works.
Though what the waking see is deadly, what the sleeping see is death.
Okay, we're back to one of Heraclitus's favorite themes, the waking versus the sleeping.
Yes, but with a really sharp twist. Though what the waking see is deadly, what the sleeping see is death. He's not just saying the sleeping are ignorant, he's making a much stronger claim.
Let's break that down. What the waking see is deadly. I take that to mean the real world, the world governed by the logos, the world you see when you're intellectually awake. He's saying that world is deadly, which makes sense, right? It's the world of strife, of war, as the father of all things. It's a world of constant flux where everything is perishing and being born.
Exactly. To be awake is to confront the terrifying, deadly process of reality. It's to understand that the river you're in is constantly flowing away, that things are always being destroyed and remade. It's not a comfortable or safe reality.
So the waking reality is a dangerous process. But then he says, what the sleeping see is death. That's not a process, it's a final state. So the people who live in their own private worlds, ignoring the common logos, they aren't just in danger, they are already dead.
It's an intellectual and spiritual death. By refusing to engage with the deadly but living reality of flux and strife, they retreat into a static illusion. And for Heraclitus, anything static is death. The only thing that's truly alive is the ever-living fire of change.
So it's another one of his brilliant, jarring paradoxes. The deadly world is the living world. The seemingly safe world of dreams and private opinions is the world of death. He's really trying to shock the listener into waking up.
The oneness of all wisdom may be found, or not, under the name of God.
The oneness of all wisdom may be found, or not, under the name of God. This is one of his most famously ambiguous fragments, isn't it? He gives us this grand concept, the oneness of all wisdom, which has to be the logos we've been talking about, and then immediately hedges on what to call it.
He does, and that hedges everything, may be found or not. It's a deliberate paradox. I think he's warning us about language. He's saying that this ultimate principle, this cosmic law, is so fundamental that our human names for it, like God or Zeus, are both fitting and profoundly inadequate at the same time.
It's a critique of conventional religion for sure. The God that people talk about is probably not what Heraclitus is pointing to. His principle is an impersonal, rational process, the ever-living fire, not a being with intentions and a personality. So, to call the Logos God is to immediately risk misunderstanding it by loading it with all that anthropomorphic baggage.
Exactly. So the Logos is willing to be called God in the sense that it's the ultimate source and ruler of all things, but it's unwilling in the sense that the name itself is a product of limited human understanding and doesn't capture its true nature. The wisdom isn't in the name, it's in the thing itself. The label is a trap.
It's another test for the reader. He's asking, can you see past the familiar word to the radical concept underneath? The name is secondary. Understanding the oneness is everything.
The living, when the dead wood of the bow springs back to life, must die.
Translator's note: an untranslatable pun in this fragment involves the Greek words for bow and life, bios and bios.
Wow, okay, this one is dense, and that translator's note is absolutely essential. Without knowing about the pun, this fragment is just a riddle.
It's everything, isn't it? The Greek words for bow and life, bios and bios, are almost identical. So for Heraclitus's original audience, the statement would have an immediate, shocking resonance that we lose in English. The instrument of death and the concept of life are literally the same word.
And it's the perfect physical metaphor for his entire philosophy. The bow is dead wood, it's inert. But its entire function, its life, comes from being put under tension, that strain of binding opposites he mentioned earlier. And when it springs back to life by releasing that tension, its purpose is to cause death.
Exactly. The life of the bow is the death of the living. It's a closed loop. It beautifully illustrates his idea that opposites aren't just related, they're the same thing viewed from different perspectives. Life is a process that necessitates death, and that process is one of constant tension, just like a bow.
Gods live past our meager death. We die past their ceaseless living.
This has that classic Heraclitean structure, a perfect, symmetrical paradox. The first line seems simple enough. Gods live past our meager death. It's a statement about scale. From the perspective of immortal beings, our entire lifespan is a blip. Our death is meager, insignificant.
Right, but the second line flips it completely. We die past their ceaseless living. That's the real puzzle. It's not just that they outlive us. He's saying our experience of dying is something beyond their experience of living. Because they live ceaselessly, they can never know death. Our mortality gives us a defining experience that is fundamentally alien to them.
Exactly. It's another perfect example of the unity of opposites. Mortal and immortal aren't just two separate states, they are a codependent relationship. The very definition of a god is a being who doesn't die. The very definition of a human is a being who does. Each state gives meaning to the other.
It's like he's saying that our mortality isn't just a lack, a meagerness. It's also a unique form of existence. We exist in the realm of ending, and that's a realm the gods can never enter. So, in a strange way, we have an experience they lack. It's the same pattern as everything else we've read. The tension between two opposites creates the whole picture.
As souls change into water on their way through death, so water changes into earth. And as water springs from earth, so from water does the soul.
Okay, so this brings us right back to his cosmology. But now he's plugging the soul directly into the elemental cycle. He's laying out a clear process.
It's a very specific process, and it connects perfectly with what he said earlier about the soul. He says souls change into water on their way through death. We've already heard him say that a dry soul is wise and good. So for Heraclitus, the process of dying is literally a process of the soul becoming moist, heavy, and sinking.
Sinking all the way down until it becomes earth. It's the downward path. But then he immediately gives us the upward path to complete the cycle. As water springs from earth, so from water does the soul. It's another one of his perfect, reciprocal transformations.
It shows that the soul isn't some special, ethereal thing that's separate from the rest of the cosmos. It's made of the same stuff, and it's subject to the exact same laws of transformation as everything else. It's part of that same cosmic rule or reckoning.
So our individual existence isn't a straight line from birth to a static afterlife. For Heraclitus, it's just one arc in this endless, natural cycle of becoming and unbecoming. The soul is part of the process, not an exception to it.
The way up is the way back.
The way up is the way back. He's just condensed the entire principle of the last fragment into 5 words. It's the perfect summary.
It is. The journey of the soul that he just described, from earth and water back up to its fiery state, is also the journey back down into death. They aren't two different roads, they're the same road traveled in opposite directions.
Or maybe not even opposite directions, but just one single cyclical process. Think of walking around a circle. Is the way up the right side the same as the way back down the left side? Yes, it's all one path.
It applies to his whole cosmology, not just the soul. The transformation of fire into the other elements is the downward path. The transformation of those elements back into fire is the upward path. For Heraclitus, this isn't a one-way street with a separate return lane. It's a single, continuous, unified process. The end of one phase is the beginning of the next, on the very same way.
The beginning is the end.
And there you have it. 3 words that sum up the last few fragments perfectly. The beginning is the end. It's the ultimate statement of cyclical reality.
It is. If the way up is the way back, then of course the beginning is the end. He's describing a circle. If you're on the circumference of a circle, any point you pick is simultaneously the end of the journey to get there and the beginning of the journey away from there.
And it applies to his entire system. The end of the fire's transformation is the beginning of its return. The end of life is the beginning of the soul's journey back into the elements. He's completely collapsing linear time.
It's the most concise rejection of a creation story or an apocalypse that you could possibly imagine. For Heraclitus, reality doesn't have a starting point or a final destination. The process itself is eternal. The end is just the beginning in disguise.
The soul is undiscovered, though explored forever to a depth beyond report.
This is such a beautiful and profound fragment. After all this talk of cosmic cycles and the soul's transformation through the elements, he brings it back to the personal, to the interior world.
And he frames it as a paradox. He tells us to inquire within, but then says the soul is undiscovered. It's not a task you can complete. The exploration is infinite.
It's the perfect application of his process metaphysics to psychology. The soul isn't a static object that you can eventually map and understand completely. Like the river, it's a process in constant flux. The exploration is a continuous act, not a project with an end date.
That phrase, a depth beyond report, is so powerful. It's a direct shot at the kind of knowledge he dismisses, the kind that can be cataloged and written down, like Hesiod's lists. Heraclitus is saying true self-knowledge isn't about collecting data about yourself. It's about plumbing a depth that can never be fully articulated or contained in words. The journey is the destination.
Moisture makes the soul succumb to joy.
Moisture makes the soul succumb to joy. This feels like a trap. All this time, Heraclitus has been telling us that a dry soul is the goal. It's wise and good. Moisture is associated with death and dissolution. Now he links it with joy?
I think the key word is succumb. It's not a positive term. You don't succumb to something good. You succumb to a weakness, a temptation, a temptation. He's not saying moisture leads to a virtuous or wise form of happiness.
So this joy is more like pleasure or indulgence, the kind of ease he warned about earlier? A moist soul succumbs to ease. It's the pleasure that comes from letting go of the tension required for wisdom.
Exactly. It's a damp, heavy pleasure. It's the joys of not thinking, of being asleep to the logos. The dry soul is taut, fiery, and alert. The moist soul is slack, and in that slackness, it finds a kind of pleasurable release. But for Heraclitus, that release is a step toward death. This isn't an endorsement of joy, it's a diagnosis of a soul losing its rational fire.
An old drunk leaning on a youngster, saturated with bad wine, head weaker than his feet.
Well, there's the moist soul in action. Heraclitus isn't being subtle here. This is a perfect, almost brutal follow-up to the last fragment.
It's the physical embodiment of his principle. He just told us moisture makes the soul succumb, and now he gives us this pathetic image, a man literally saturated with bad wine. The soul is drenched, and the result is chaos.
And that line, head weaker than his feet, is the absolute core of it. For Heraclitus, the head, the soul, should be this dry, fiery, rational thing that guides the body. Here, reason has been completely overwhelmed. The mind has no control, and the body is just stumbling along, led by its basest functions.
It's also a picture of dependency and a reversal of the natural order. He's leaning on a youngster. The elder, who should be the font of wisdom, is now a helpless burden on the next generation because he's drowned his own inner fire. It's a damning portrait of the person who is asleep to the logos.
Dry, the soul grows wise and good.
And there's the other side of the coin. After that miserable image of the drunkard, he gives us the ideal in its purest, most concise form.
Exactly. Dry, the soul grows wise and good. It's so simple and direct. We've been circling this idea the whole time, with his critiques of the moist soul and pleasure, and here he just states the positive principle. It's the foundation of his entire ethic.
It brings together all the threads. Dry means fiery. It means the soul is in its most active, rational state, closest to the nature of the logos itself, which he called the ever-living fire. So for Heraclitus, wisdom and goodness aren't about following a set of rules. They are a state of being, determined by the elemental condition of your soul.
It's a physical metaphor for a psychological state. To be wise is to be alert, sharp, and quick, like fire. To be foolish is to be slow, heavy, and saturated, like the drunkard we just saw. He's made his point perfectly clear. After showing us the failure, he shows us the goal.
A dry light dries the earth.
A dry light dries the earth. This feels like the final piece of the puzzle for this entire section on the soul. It's so elegant.
It is. After defining the goal, dry, the soul grows wise and good, he now tells us what that wise soul does. It's not a passive state. The dry light is the wise soul, the fiery intelligence.
And the earth has to represent the opposite state. Following his own cosmology, the soul descends through water into earth. So earth is the condition of maximum moisture, ignorance, and inertia, the state of the sleeping masses, the state of the drunkard.
Exactly. So the wise soul, this dry light, has an active, transformative power. It dries the earth. It works on the world around it, pulling the metaphorical moisture out of ignorance and starting it on the upward path toward wisdom.
It's the psychological version of his cosmology. Just as the sun's fire draws moisture up from the earth, the wise soul's inner fire has the power to enlighten, to dry up the dampness of foolishness and bring it closer to the logos. Wisdom isn't just a personal state, it's an active force in the cosmos.
C note, translator's note, fragments 74, 75, and 76 overlap. This translation separates the sense of 74 and 75, and omits 76.
And here we are again. Another C note, another omitted fragment.
It's becoming a signature of this translation, isn't it? The translator stepping in to curate the text for us. And what's interesting is the variety of reasons he gives.
Exactly. I remember back at fragment 42, he cut it because it was a third-hand account he deemed unreliable. Then fragment 54 was omitted simply for being a repetition of the one before it.
Right. So he's trimming for different reasons, for reliability, for redundancy, and now with this one, fragment 76, for what he calls overlaps with the two we just read.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just reading Heraclitus, we're reading Brooks Haxton's interpretation of Heraclitus. He's not just a window pane, he's a lens, actively focusing the light and filtering out what he considers noise to give us what he believes is the clearest possible image of the philosophy.
A man in the quiet of the night is kindled like a fire soon quenched.
Okay, this is a very striking and somewhat sad image. Heraclitus is bringing his grand cosmology right down to the level of a single person in the dark.
It feels like a perfect description of the sleepers he's been criticizing since the very first fragment. The quiet of the night is that private world cut off from the common logos. In that state, a man isn't the steady, ever-living fire of the cosmos. He's just a brief flicker.
Exactly, kindled like a fire. For a moment, there's a spark of consciousness, a thought, maybe a dream that feels profound. It's a connection to that fiery principle of the logos. But then it's soon quenched. It can't be sustained. The darkness and the moisture of the ignorant state immediately put it out.
It's the absolute opposite of the wise soul, which he described as a dry light. That dry light is an active, steady force that can dry the earth around it. This fire is passive and fleeting. It flares up and dies without having any effect. It's a beautiful metaphor for the potential for wisdom that exists in everyone, but which, for most people, never becomes a sustained flame.
Only the living may be dead, the waking sleep, the young be old.
This is Heraclitus in his element, a perfect three-part paradox. Only the living may be dead, the waking sleep, the young be old.
It's his entire philosophy of process and potentiality in a single sentence. Let's take that first part. Only the living may be dead. He doesn't mean it literally. He means it in the sense we've been discussing. A corpse is just a corpse. Only a person who is physically alive can be intellectually and spiritually dead, asleep to the logos.
Right? And the second part, the waking sleep, is the most direct description of that state. It's the condition of the masses he's been critiquing from the very beginning. They're physically awake, going about their lives, but their minds are completely asleep, lost in their private worlds, cut off from the common reality.
Exactly. And then he applies the same logic to the physical process of life. The young be old. The potential for old age is contained within youth. You can't be one without the other being an implicit future. It's another way of stating that the beginning is the end, that all things are part of a single, continuous process of transformation where each state contains its opposite.
Time is a game played beautifully by children.
Time is a game played beautifully by children. Wow. After all the dense paradoxical fragments about life, death, and the soul, he gives us this. It's so simple and poetic, but it feels incredibly profound.
It really does. And I think the key is children. Why do children play beautifully? Because they're completely absorbed in the process. They aren't worried about the outcome or what the game means. They're just playing. It's the perfect metaphor for his entire process metaphysics. Adults see time as a line, a resource to be managed. Children experience it as a fluid, present moment.
That's a great point. And the fact that it's a game is important too. A game isn't random chaos, it has rules. So this isn't a statement that time is just meaningless flux. It's a patterned, rule-governed process. It's the logos at work, but its nature is best understood through the spirit of play, not through rigid, linear analysis.
Exactly. The children are wise in a way that the learning-obsessed adults he criticizes are not. They are naturally aligned with the true nature of reality as a constant, beautiful, and ordered unfolding. They aren't trying to stop the river, they're just playing in it. It's a stunning image.
Applicants for wisdom do what I have done, inquire within.
Applicants for wisdom do what I have done. I love the confidence. He's not just offering advice, he's presenting himself as the successful prototype. He's saying, if you want to be wise, follow my lead.
It's pure Heraclitus. But the advice itself, inquire within, is the cornerstone of his entire project. He spent so much time dismissing external authorities like poets and so-called sages. For him, the source of truth isn't out there in a book, it's inside.
It's the practical instruction that follows from Fragment 71, where he said the soul is undiscovered, though explored forever. That was the description of the task. This is the method. The infinite territory to be explored is your own self.
Exactly, because for him, the logos, that universal principle, isn't just an external cosmic law. It's something you can discover within your own consciousness, within the structure of your own soul. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm. So to understand the universe, the first and most important step is to understand yourself. He's redirecting the philosophical quest from the outside world to the inner world.
Just as the river where I step is not the same, and is, so I am as I am not.
And here we have it again, the river. But this time he draws the parallel directly to the self. It's not just an observation about the external world, it's a definition of what it means to be a person.
Exactly, just as the river, so I am. He's taking that core principle of process metaphysics and applying it to identity itself. The structure is pure Heraclitus, is not the same, and is, my identity persists, but only through constant change. The I that exists is the I that is in flux.
It completely reframes the question of, who am I? The answer isn't a static list of properties. The answer is a process. I am as I am not. My being is composed just as much of what I am ceasing to be and what I am about to become. It connects directly back to that idea of the soul being a cycle of moisture and dryness we just discussed.
It does. That cycle isn't something that happens to the soul. That cycle is the soul. This fragment feels like the personal, psychological consequence of his entire cosmology. If the cosmos is an ever-living fire, a constant process of transformation, then so is the self that exists within it. To inquire within is to find this river.
The rule that makes its subject weary is a sentence of hard labor.
Okay, so this feels like a shift from the metaphysical to the political. Aphorism 82.
It does, but it's perfectly in line with his thinking. The rule that makes its subject weary is a sentence of hard labor. He's distinguishing between two kinds of law, isn't he? There's the logos, the cosmic rule, which is just the way things are. And then there are man-made laws.
And he's saying a bad man-made law, one that goes against our nature or the nature of reality, isn't just an inconvenience. It's a form of slavery. It's exhausting. It's a sentence.
Precisely. Living in accordance with the logos, while it requires wisdom, is natural. It's like swimming with the current of the river. But following a foolish, oppressive, or unnatural rule is hard labor, because you are constantly fighting the true nature of things. This is Heraclitus, the social critic, coming to the fore again.
It makes me think of the people he describes as being asleep, or like the walking dead. They are the ones who follow these wearying rules without question. Their entire existence is a form of hard labor because they're living in a way that's disconnected from the vibrant, fiery, strife-filled reality of the logos.
For this reason, change gives rest.
For this reason, so he's directly connecting this to the last line. Because a bad rule is hard labor, change gives rest. That's such a beautiful and counterintuitive thought. We think of rest as the cessation of motion, as stasis.
But for Heraclitus, that's entirely wrong. Stasis is the illusion. The struggle against the natural flow of things, that's the hard labors that makes us weary. The rest he's talking about isn't stopping. It's the feeling of relief when you stop fighting the current and just move with it.
It's a psychological insight as much as a metaphysical one. The anxiety of trying to hold on to a fixed identity or a permanent state of affairs is exhausting. The rest is accepting the process, accepting the flux. It's the opposite of weariness because you're finally in harmony with the way things actually are.
Exactly. This connects his politics directly back to his cosmology. A good law, a good life, is one that mirrors the logos. It embraces change as its fundamental principle. Rest isn't found by escaping the river, but by learning how to navigate it.
Goat cheese melted in warm wine congeals if not well stirred.
And from political philosophy, we go straight to the kitchen. Goat cheese melted in warm wine congeals if not well stirred. I love how Heraclitus does this. He'll state a cosmic law and then give you this incredibly mundane, concrete example of it in action.
It's the perfect metaphor for his entire system. The mixture of cheese and wine is a temporary unity of opposites, solid and liquid. What maintains that unity? What keeps it from separating back into its constituent parts? Constant motion. The stirring.
The stirring is the logos in action. It's the war that holds things together. The harmony of the mixture is entirely dependent on this process. The moment you stop, the moment you try to let it be static, it fails. It congeals. It breaks down.
So stasis is decay. It's not a neutral state of rest. It's an active process of separation and ruin. This directly supports the idea that change gives rest. The harmonious, restful state of the mixture is the state of being stirred. The labor is trying to hold it still. It's a brilliant, simple image for a profound metaphysical point.
Corpses, like night soil, get carted off.
Wow, he really doesn't pull any punches. Corpses, like night soil, get carted off. That's about as blunt and unsentimental as you can get. He's stripping away every last shred of human reverence for the dead.
It's a brutal image, but it's perfectly consistent with his metaphysics. What is a corpse? It's matter from which the fire, the logos, the principle of life and change has departed. From the perspective of the cosmos, it's no longer a person. It's just raw material, like any other waste product, ready to be reintegrated into the elemental cycle.
It's the final stage of that process we discussed, where the soul becomes moist in death and turns to earth. This is the physical reality of that transformation. He's forcing us to see that our sentimental attachment to the body is a purely human convention, one that ignores the larger, impersonal process of nature.
Exactly. It's a direct attack on our values. We see a corpse and think of a person. Heraclitus sees it and thinks of fertilizer. It's another one of his intellectual shocks, designed to shake us out of our sleep and make us see the world not as we wish it were, but as a relentless process of transformation.
The living, though they yearn for consummation of their fate, need rest, and in their turn leave children to fulfill their doom.
This is one of his most melancholy fragments. It feels almost fatalistic. The living, though they yearn for consummation of their fate, it sounds like people strive to live their life to the fullest, to reach their end, but then they need rest.
And that rest seems to be the final one, because in their turn they leave children to fulfill their doom. That word, doom, is so heavy, it sounds like a curse being passed down.
It's certainly bleak from a modern, individualistic perspective. But within Heraclitus' system, could dooms just mean one's allotted fate, your role in the cosmic process? The individual is a temporary pattern in the river. You live, you participate in the strife and tension of the logos, and then your pattern dissolves. That is your fate, your doom.
So the children aren't inheriting a curse, they're just inheriting the same fundamental condition of existence. They are the next wave in the river. The rest the parents need is the final dissolution, the end of their particular struggle.
Exactly. It's the cycle of life viewed without sentiment. Just as corpses become night soil to be carted off, the living play their part and then make way for the next players. The individual life is finite, but the cosmic process of which it is a part, the process of generations fulfilling their dooms, is eternal. It's another expression of that same relentless, unsentimental cycle.
In 30 years, a newborn boy can grow to father him a son, who grows by then to father sons himself.
So, after that rather bleak line about leaving children to fulfill their doom, he gives us this very concrete, almost strangely specific calculation.
It is, isn't it? In 30 years, he's putting a number on the generational cycle he just described. He's observing the measure of human continuity. It's the human version of the sun being a timekeeper's. It's a lawful, predictable pattern, a rhythm to the process.
It's the human river. The flow isn't chaotic, it has this 30-year pulse. He's not interested in the individual stories of the father or the son, but in the relentless, predictable process of replacement itself.
Exactly. It has the same observational, almost cold quality as corpses, like night soil, get carted offs. He's stepping back and describing humanity as just another natural phenomenon, a process with its own internal logic and timing. The doom from the last fragment isn't a curse, it's just this cycle. This is what it means to be human, to participate in this 30-year relay race and then be done.
30, therefore, names the moon of generation.
30, therefore, names the moon of generation. And there's the punchline to the previous fragment. He's taking that observation about the 30-year human cycle and formalizing it. He's giving it a name.
Exactly. He's coining a term, and the term he chooses is so poetic and significant, the moon of generation. He's deliberately linking the rhythm of human life to the rhythms of the cosmos. The moon marks the months. It waxes and wanes. It's the great celestial timekeeper of cycles.
So he's saying that this 30-year turnover isn't just a biological fact, it's the fundamental unit of time for humanity as a species. It's our own cosmic cycle. Just as the earth has the sun and moon to mark its time, the river of humanity has the moon of generation.
It's a beautiful way to frame it. He's found the measure, the logos, in the human life cycle itself. It elevates a simple demographic observation into a metaphysical principle, perfectly integrating the human world into his broader vision of a cosmos governed by rhythmic, lawful change.
Look, the baby born under the new moon under the old moon holds her grandchild in her arms.
Translator's note, this fragment, like fragments 53 and 120, exists only in a Latin paraphrase of the Greek.
Look, he's commanding our attention again. After giving us the mathematical observation of the 30-year cycle, and then the philosophical name for it, the moon of generation, he finally gives us the human image that contains it all.
It's the whole thing in a single, beautiful sentence. The baby born under the new moon, under the old moon, holds her grandchild in her arms. It's the entire cycle. The repetition of moon ties the human lifespan directly to the cosmic rhythm he's been talking about.
And the translator's note is a good reminder of what we're dealing with. The fact that this only exists in a Latin paraphrase adds another layer of distance. And yet, the core concept feels so essentially Heraclitean. This is the human river, made manifest in a single person's life.
It really is. She contains the whole process. She is the baby, and she is the grandmother. She embodies that principle from Fragment 81, I am as I am not. Her identity has persisted through this complete transformation. It's a moment of harmony, but it's a harmony born from the relentless process of time and change.
Even a soul submerged in sleep is hard at work and helps make something of the world.
This is fascinating. After so consistently using sleep as his primary metaphor for ignorance and being disconnected from the logos, he says this: even a soul submerged in sleep is hard at work and helps make something of the world. It seems like a complete reversal.
Or maybe a clarification. He's been talking about the walking dead, those who are metaphorically asleep while awake. Perhaps here he's talking about literal, biological sleep. And his point is that even in that state of unconsciousness, the soul, the life principle, is not static. It's still a process, it's still hard at work.
That makes sense. The body is still functioning, the mind is dreaming. It's not a state of nothingness. It's a different mode of being. It's still participating in the cosmic fire, just in a different way. It helps make something of the world, even if that world is the private, internal world of a dream.
It also reinforces his core idea that there is no true stasis. He's just spent several fragments describing the relentless cycles of life and death. Sleep is just another part of that cycle. It's not an absence of activity, but a different kind of activity. It contrasts sharply with his description of a corpse, which is just inert matter to be carted off. The sleeping soul is still very much alive and engaged in the process of being.
Since mindfulness of all things is the ground of being, to speak one's true mind and to keep things known in common serves all being, just as laws made clear uphold the city, yet with greater strength. Of all pronouncements of the law, the one source is the word whereby we choose what helps true mindfulness prevail.
Okay, this fragment feels absolutely central. Since mindfulness, of all things, is the ground of being, he's not just saying mindfulness is important, he's saying it's the very foundation of reality. That's a massive leap.
It has to be his word for the human mind aligning with the logos, right? It's the state of being awake. And if that's the case, then what follows is his entire ethical and political philosophy in a nutshell. Speaking your true mind, keeping knowledge in common, these aren't just social virtues. They are acts that serve the entire cosmos because they participate in the logos.
And the analogy to the city law is perfect. He's saying our human laws are a pale, weaker imitation of the cosmic law. They uphold the city, sure, but the logos upholds everything, and with greater strength. It puts human politics in its proper place, as a local expression of a universal principle.
Exactly. And that final sentence ties it all up. Of all pronouncements of the law, the one source is the word. There it is. The logos. It's the single source code for a good person, a good city, and a good cosmos. The goal of human choice, then, is to tune into that source and amplify it, to choose what helps true mindfulness prevail. This is his entire system unified in one fragment.
Although we need the word to keep things known in common, people still treat specialists as if their nonsense were a form of wisdom.
He's immediately following up on that grand unifying statement about mindfulness and the word with this very pointed, very cynical observation about society.
It's classic Heraclitus. He presents the ideal, the shared word that we all need, and then immediately contrasts it with the grim reality. People ignore this common ground and instead elevate specialists and their nonsense.
You can just feel his contempt for them. It connects directly back to his earlier dismissals of people like Hesiod and Pythagoras. They are the specialists. They accumulate facts, they learn many things, but they don't grasp the one thing that matters, the logos, the underlying unity.
Exactly. Their knowledge is just a collection of disconnected data points. It's nonsense precisely because it isn't grounded in the universal. He's making a profound distinction between knowing many things and being wise. Wisdom is seeing the hidden attunement, not memorizing a list of facts. And he's diagnosing a fundamental flaw in human society, our tendency to be impressed by the accumulation of trivia rather than the pursuit of genuine understanding.
Fools seek counsel from the ones they doubt.
That is a brutally concise and accurate psychological diagnosis. Fools seek counsel from the ones they doubt. It points to a kind of profound self-deception.
It's the direct result of the situation he just described in the last fragment. If you've been taught to value the nonsense of specialists over the common word, you're left in a state of permanent confusion. You go to the expert because you're supposed to, but your own intuition, however weak, tells you something is off.
So you're trapped. You don't trust your own judgment because you're asleep, but you also can't fully commit to the external authority you're seeking. It's a state of intellectual paralysis.
Exactly. The fool's problem isn't just that they ask the wrong person, it's that they don't have a stable enough inner ground to even know what a right person would look like. Their doubt is a symptom of their total disconnection from the logos, from that ground of being he just talked about. They are adrift, and they're asking for directions from people they suspect are just as lost as they are.
People need not act and speak as if they were asleep.
And this feels like the ethical conclusion to the last few fragments. People need not act and speak as if they were asleep. After describing the fools, the specialists, the self-deception, he offers this. It's a statement of potential.
It's a direct command, isn't it? It implies that there is a choice. He spent so much of the text diagnosing the condition of humanity as being asleep, but this line says that condition is not necessary. It's not our unchangeable fate.
Exactly. It reframes his whole project. He's not just a cynical observer cataloging human folly. He's a physician offering a cure. The state of being asleep, of being a fool who seeks counsel from those they doubt, is not a permanent sentence. It's a choice, and you can choose differently.
It's the optimistic flip side to his initial, very harsh diagnosis that most people live as if in a private world. He's saying the door to the common world, the world of the logos, is open. You just have to choose to stop acting like you're in a dream. It's a profound call to personal responsibility.
The waking have one world in common. Sleepers, meanwhile, turn aside, each into a darkness of his own.
And this is the payoff for the last fragment. He says you don't have to be asleep, and now he tells you what the stakes are. The waking have one world in common. That's the logos. That's the shared reality.
Exactly. And the sleepers, the ones who ignore the word, what happens to them? They turn aside, each into a darkness of his own. It's the clearest statement he's made about his critique. Ignorance isn't just a lack of knowledge, it's a state of radical isolation.
It perfectly echoes his very first fragments, where he complained that people live as if they have a private understanding. This is the same idea, but stated so much more poetically. To be awake is to be connected to everyone and everything else through the logos. To be asleep is to be trapped in the prison of your own subjective reality.
That phrase, turn aside, is so important. It confirms what he said in the last fragment. It's a choice. You actively turn away from the common world. It's not something that just happens to you, and the consequence is darkness and solitude. He's framing the pursuit of wisdom not just as an intellectual exercise, but as the only way to truly live in a shared world with others.
The habit of knowledge is not human, but divine.
Wow. After that call to action, that statement that we can choose to wake up, he hits us with this. The habit of knowledge is not human, but divine. It feels like he's snatching that possibility away again.
It does at first, doesn't it? It sounds like he's saying true, sustained wisdom is impossible for mortals. But maybe he means something else by human here. Maybe human refers to the default state he's been criticizing all along, the state of being asleep, isolated, and foolish.
I think that's exactly right. The habit of knowledge, this constant state of being awake and aligned with the logos, is not something that originates from our flawed, sleeping human nature. It's a participation in something much larger. The divine is the logos itself, the ever-living fire.
So to achieve this habit is to transcend the merely human condition and touch the divine. It's not a skill you learn like a specialist nonsense. It's a fundamental alignment of your being with the cosmic order. It raises the stakes of what it means to be wise from an intellectual achievement to a spiritual one.
The language of a grown man to the cosmic powers sounds like baby talk to men.
Well, that's one way to put us in our place. This feels like the natural and incredibly humbling follow-up to the last fragment. If the habit of knowledge is divine, then this is what our human attempts at it look like from that divine perspective.
It's an absolutely devastating analogy. He's created a clear ratio. As a baby's babbling is to an adult's speech, so an adult's speech is to the logos. It means our most sophisticated philosophy, our most complex science, our deepest art, it's all pre-linguistic fumbling from the perspective of the cosmos.
It completely reframes the goal of wisdom. The goal isn't to become an expert who has all the answers. That's impossible because our very language, our entire conceptual framework is inadequate. The goal, maybe, is just to be a slightly more articulate baby.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the profound limitations of the human viewpoint he mentioned in the last fragment. This is why we need the word, why we need to listen to something beyond ourselves. Without it, we're just talking to ourselves in a language that the universe doesn't even recognize as coherent. It's the ultimate argument for intellectual humility.
To a god, the wisdom of the wisest man sounds apish. Beauty in a human face looks apish too. In everything we have attained the excellence of apes.
If the last fragment was humbling, this one is just brutal. He's doubling down on the analogy. Baby talk has now become apish. It's an even more visceral and demeaning comparison.
And he's explicitly broadening the scope. It's not just our wisdom that's apish, our beauty is too. In everything we have attained the excellence of apes. He's saying that our absolute best, the pinnacle of human achievement in any field, is, from a cosmic perspective, just the clever tricks of a primate.
That phrase, the excellence of apes, is so powerful because it's a paradox. An ape can be an excellent ape, but its excellence is still constrained by its nature as an ape. He's saying the same is true for us. We can be the wisest human, the most beautiful human, but that's still just the peak of a very limited category of being.
It completely demolishes human pride and exceptionalism. It's the ultimate argument against hubris. The only way to escape this apish condition is to do what he said in Fragment 96, to cultivate that habit of knowledge, which is not human, but divine. The goal is to stop being the most excellent ape and start participating, however humbly, in the mind of a god.
The apes find most beautiful looks apish to non-apes.
And here's the logical proof for the insult he just delivered in the last fragment. He's laying out the axiom for us. The apes find most beautiful looks apish to non-apes. It's a statement about the relativity of judgment.
It's perfectly constructed. Within a given category, apes, it's possible to determine a most beautiful. But as soon as you step outside that category, the standard of judgment changes completely. The non-ape isn't applying apish standards.
Which means, to bring it back to his main point, that the wisest man is only wise by human standards. The most beautiful person is only beautiful by human standards. From the perspective of the non-ape, the divine logos, the entire category is limited.
It's the ultimate expression of that relativity we saw earlier with the ass choosing litter over gold, or the sea being pure for fish and poison for men. He's saying our entire species' value system is just as provincial. We're all just apes admiring what we think is the most beautiful ape, completely unaware of how we look from the outside.
People ought to fight to keep their law as to defend the city's walls.
After all that cosmic humbling, comparing us to apes and babies, he brings us right back down to earth with this. It's so direct, so political. People ought to fight to keep their law as to defend the city's walls.
It's the political duty that follows from his metaphysics. He just spent ages telling us about the logos, the word, and how human law is a reflection of it. The law he's talking about here can't be just any law. It has to be the good law, the one that's in tune with that cosmic order.
Exactly. A bad law is hard labor, as he said before. You wouldn't fight for that. You wouldn't fight for that. So he's saying the integrity of the city's internal order, its constitution, is as critical as its physical borders. The walls protect the city from external enemies, but the law protects it from internal chaos, from falling asleep.
It's a fight for the city's very soul, and the stakes are incredibly high. A city with broken walls can be rebuilt. But a city that has lost its connection to the logos, that has abandoned its foundational law, that city is already dead, even if it looks prosperous. This is his call to arms for the waking, the few who understand what's truly at stake.
The luckiest men die worthwhile deaths.
And right after telling us to fight for the law as we would for the city walls, he gives us this. The luckiest men die worthwhile deaths. It feels like a direct continuation. The worthwhile death is the one you die defending that law.
Exactly. He's defining what a good death is, and it's not dying peacefully in your sleep surrounded by family. The worthwhile death is one that has meaning in relation to the logos, in relation to that cosmic and civic law he's just been talking about. The luck isn't about avoiding pain, it's about being given the opportunity to die for something that matters.
It's a very martial, very aristocratic virtue, isn't it? It reminds me of the Homeric ideal, but with a philosophical twist. It's not just about glory, it's about dying in a way that affirms the fundamental nature of reality, which for Heraclitus is this lawful strife. To die in that struggle is to be fully awake at the moment of your death.
And the alternative, the unlucky death, would be to die as one of the sleepers, ignorant and disconnected from the common world of the logos. A long life that ends in delusion is, for Heraclitus, a wasted and therefore unworthwhile one. This is the ultimate expression of his anti-sentimental view of the human condition.
Gods, like men, revere the boys who die for them in battle.
This feels like Heraclitus is giving us a concrete, almost mythic example of the previous fragment. The worthwhile death is the death in battle, and its worth is confirmed not just by human society, but by the gods themselves.
It completely reframes the idea of reverence. It's not about piety or sacrifices in a temple. It's about participating in the fundamental reality of the cosmos, which he has repeatedly told us is strife or war. By dying in battle, these boys are aligning themselves so perfectly with the logos that even the divine recognizes it.
And notice the phrasing, gods, like men, he's putting them on the same level in this specific judgment. It implies that this value, the reverence for a warrior's death, is a universal truth that cuts across the mortal and immortal realms. It's not a mere human convention, it's a reflection of the cosmic order.
It's the ultimate validation of his whole system. If war is the father of all things, then the greatest act is to fully give yourself to that principle. It's a stark and uncompromising ethical position derived directly from his metaphysics. There is no higher calling for Heraclitus than to be a warrior for the law, because the law is strife.
Insolence needs drowning worse than wildfire.
Wow. Okay, so after establishing that the highest virtue is to die defending the law, he immediately tells us what the greatest internal threat to that law is: insolence. And look at the comparison he uses. It needs drowning worse than wildfire.
That's such a powerful image. A wildfire is a massive, external, and obvious threat to a community. Everyone can see it and agree it needs to be put out. But Heraclitus is saying that this internal moral failing, this arrogance or hybris, is an even greater danger. It's a spiritual cancer that rots the city from the inside.
And the remedy he proposes isn't just punishment, it's total eradication. You don't just dampen insolence, you drown it. You extinguish it completely. It shows just how seriously he takes this threat. If the law is the city's soul, then insolence is the disease that will kill it far more surely than any external enemy or disaster.
It's a statement about priorities. For Heraclitus, the integrity of the social and cosmic order embodied in the city's law is more fundamental than the physical survival of its buildings. He's telling the waking that their first duty is a kind of ruthless moral policing against those who, in their sleepwalking arrogance, would tear down that order.
Always having what we want may not be the best good fortune. Health seems sweetest after sickness, food and hunger, goodness in the wake of evil, and at the end of day-long labor sleep.
And here's the psychological underpinning for the last fragment. Why is insolence so dangerous? Because it's the state of a person who has forgotten this principle. Always having what we want may not be the best good fortune.
It's his core doctrine of the unity of opposites, but brought down to the most personal, experiential level. He's showing that the same law that governs the cosmos, that night gives meaning to day, that peace is defined by war, also governs our own bodies and minds. You only truly understand and value health in the shadow of sickness.
Exactly. The value isn't inherent in the thing itself, but in the process, in the tension between opposites. Food is just stuff until you're hungry. Sleep is just a state until you're exhausted from labor. He's arguing against a simple, hedonistic view of life where the goal is to eliminate all negative experiences.
To Heraclitus, that would be a disaster. A life without struggle, sickness, or evil would be a life without sweetness, health, or goodness. It would be a flat, meaningless existence. The sleepers are the ones who chase after a world without tension, not realizing that the tension is what gives life its shape and value. This is a profound ethical argument grounded directly in his physics.
Yearning hurts, and what release may come of it feels much like death.
This feels like the other side of the coin from the last fragment. He just told us that we appreciate things through their opposites, and now he's telling us about the very nature of desire itself. Yearning hurts, a simple enough observation. Why eat? But the second half, what release may come of it, feels much like death. That's startling.
It is, but it's pure Heraclitus. If life is strife, tension, and constant process, the fire, then what is the release from yearning? It's satisfaction. It's stasis. It's the end of that particular tension. And for Heraclitus, any state of stasis is a form of death. It's the unstirred cheese and wine settling into decay.
So the very thing we strive for, the satisfaction of our desires, is a little taste of oblivion. The hurt of yearning is the feeling of being alive and engaged in the cosmic tension. To be sated is to be inert. It reminds me of his idea of the moist soul that succumbs to joy. This release is a kind of dampening of the soul's fire.
Exactly. He's not advocating for a life of pleasure-seeking. In his system, a life of constant satisfaction would be a living death. The goal is not to eliminate the painful yearning, but to understand that the yearning is the process of life. This is such a tough, anti-hedonistic worldview. He's telling us that the struggle is the point. The release is just an ending.
All people ought to know themselves and everyone be wholly mindful.
And after all the complexities, he lands on this, something so direct and foundational. All people ought to know themselves. It's the famous Delphic command, isn't it? The one he's been building toward with his instruction to inquire within.
It is, but he immediately joins it with the second phrase, which defines it in his own terms, and everyone be wholly mindful. We've established that for Heraclitus, mindfulness isn't just introspection, it's alignment with the logos. It's the act of waking up from your private dream and participating in the common world.
So the two phrases are a single thought. To know yourself is to become mindful of the cosmic law that flows through you. What strikes me, though, is the word all. It's a universal obligation. But this seems to clash with his constant critique that most people are numb or walking dead.
I think that's the point. It's a universal ought, a standard that everyone is subject to, which makes their failure to meet it all the more damning in his eyes. He's not saying only an elite can do this. He's saying an elite are the only ones who actually do it. This single, simple-sounding command is the yardstick by which he measures and condemns the sleepers.
To be even-minded is the greatest virtue. Wisdom is to speak the truth and act in keeping with its nature.
He seems to be giving us a roadmap. He just told us we ought to know ourselves and be mindful, and now he's telling us what the result of that process is. To be even-minded is the greatest virtue. This isn't just about being calm. It feels like he's describing a state of perfect attunement.
I think that's exactly right. Even-minded is the internal state of someone who is awake to the logos. Their mind is no longer pulled around by the private delusions of the sleepers or the excesses of insolence. It has found its proper balance, a balance that reflects the ordered, lawful flux of the cosmos itself.
And then he defines wisdom in a way that is so practical. It's not just about having profound thoughts. Wisdom is to speak the truth and act in keeping with its nature. It links knowing, speaking, and doing into one seamless activity. Your life becomes a performance of the truth you've perceived.
Yes, and that truth, for Heraclitus, is the logos. So the wise person speaks and acts in a way that manifests the cosmic principle of pattern change and the unity of opposites. This is the ultimate fulfillment of his command to know yourself. To know yourself is to understand your place in the cosmic order, and wisdom is living that understanding out loud in your words and your actions. It's a complete union of thought and life.
Not to be quite such a fool sounds good. The trick, with so much wine and easy company, is how.
I love the tone of this one. After all that high-minded talk of virtue and wisdom, he brings it right down to earth. Not to be quite such a fool sounds good. It's so understated and almost sarcastic.
It is, and he immediately tells us what the primary obstacle is. It's not a lack of intelligence, it's so much wine and easy company. This takes us right back to his image of the moist soul, the drunkard being led around by a child. He's giving us the recipe for how to become one of the sleeping dead.
Exactly. The wine is the literal moistening of the soul, and the easy companies is the social pressure that encourages it. It's the comfort of the shared private world of the sleepers. It's so much easier to get lost in that than to do the hard work of being mindful and defending the law.
And that's why he calls it a trick. The question is, how? He's acknowledging the sheer difficulty of maintaining that dry, fiery, even-minded state when the world is constantly offering you the damp, easy comfort of foolishness. It's a very practical, almost psychological observation. He's saying the path to wisdom isn't just a matter of thinking the right thoughts, it's a constant battle against temptation.
Stupidity is better kept a secret than displayed.
Well, that's a direct follow-up to the last one, isn't it? He says it's tricky not to be a fool, and now he gives this piece of very pragmatic, almost bitter advice. If you can't manage wisdom, at least manage your reputation by keeping quiet.
It's pure social commentary. It feels like he's speaking directly to the masses, the sleepers. He's saying, look, I know most of you aren't going to get it. The best you can do for the rest of us, for the city, is to not inflict your ignorance on everyone else.
Exactly, and it's the direct inverse of what he said wisdom is. Wisdom is to speak the truth and act in keeping with its nature. If you're a fool, you're incapable of that, so the next best thing is silence. Displaying your stupidity is actively working against the logos.
It's a form of containment. It's like he's saying that public foolishness is a contagion, a kind of social pollution. It's a lesser form of the insolence that needs drowning. He's not telling you this for your own good, he's telling you for the good of the city.
Sound thinking is to listen well and choose one course of action.
And here's the positive prescription that follows the negative one. He just told fools to keep quiet, and now he tells us what the wise do. Sound thinking is to listen well, which for Heraclitus can only mean one thing, listening to the logos.
Exactly. It's not about listening to other people or to popular opinion. That's the hearsay he dismissed right at the beginning. It's about perceiving the underlying structure of reality, and then look at the consequence of that perception and choose one course of action.
That's the key part. It's a definition of wisdom as effective, unified action. If you have truly listened to the logos and understood the nature of things, your actions won't be fragmented or contradictory. You will see the correct path and take it. The choice becomes singular because the truth is singular.
It's the perfect description of the waking individual. They perceive the one common world, and so they act in a unified way within it. The sleepers, lost in their private worlds, are pulled in 1,000 different directions by their own whims and illusions. They can't choose one course of action because they aren't listening to the one unifying principle. This is wisdom as a form of profound integrity.
What use are these people's wits, who let themselves be led by speechmakers in crowds without considering how many fools and thieves they are among, and how few choose the good? The best choose progress toward one thing, a name forever honored by the gods, while others eat their way toward sleep like nameless oxen.
Wow, this is maybe the most direct and contemptuous statement of his political philosophy we've seen yet. He's not just critiquing the masses, he's asking what the point of their intelligence even is, since they just follow demagogues into foolishness.
It's a complete rejection of democratic sentiment. The crowd is not a source of wisdom but a collection of fools and thieves. He sees them as fundamentally irrational, unable to discern the good from the bad, and easily manipulated. And he immediately contrasts this mob with the best.
And the contrast is so stark. The best choose progress toward one thing, a name forever honored by the gods. This connects perfectly to what he's been saying. The wise person listens to the logos and chooses one course of action. Here, that action is aimed at achieving a kind of immortal glory, a worthwhile legacy.
while the others, that final line is just brutal. Others eat their way toward sleep like nameless oxen. It's the ultimate metaphor for the sleepers. Their lives are reduced to a purely biological, animalistic process of consumption that ends in the oblivion of sleep and death. They are anonymous, interchangeable, and without any higher purpose. It's the most dismissive view of the common person's life imaginable.
Not far from the ancient city of Miletus lived the son of Tutamus, whose name was Bias. I would have it known, this one man more than others earned the good esteem of worthy people.
Translator's note, the name of the town here is Phryne, but little is known about Phryne, so I mention nearby Miletus instead. Miletus was an important city from the heyday of Minoan culture until the Ionian revolt in Heraclitus' time.
Well, that's a sudden shift. After that brutal takedown of the masses, Heraclitus singles out one specific person, Bias, for praise. It's the first time he's held up an individual as a positive example.
It is, and it's clearly meant as the direct counterpoint to the nameless oxen. He's showing us what one of the best looks like. Bias was one of the 7 sages of Greece, renowned for his wisdom and justice. So when Heraclitus says he earned the good esteem of worthy people, he's essentially saying that Bias was recognized by the waking as one of their own.
It's a powerful endorsement, but we have to talk about the translator's note here. He just openly admits, I changed the name of the town. So he swapped Phryne for the more famous Miletus to help the reader.
It's another fascinating example of the translator's active hand in shaping this text. We've seen him rephrase things for clarity, reorder fragments, and now he's changing geographical details. It forces us to remember that we are reading a curated interpretation, not just a transparent window onto the original text.
Absolutely. On one hand, you can understand the impulse. He wants to ground the text for a modern reader who wouldn't know Phryne. But on the other hand, it's a deliberate alteration of the source. It really underscores how much trust we place in a translator and how their choices construct the philosophical experience for us.
Exactly. But bringing it back to Heraclitus's point, this fragment serves a crucial function. After describing the ideal wise person in the abstract, the one who listens to the logos and chooses one course, he points to Bias and says, here is what one looks like in the real world. It makes his philosophy concrete.
Give me one man from among 10,000, if he be the best.
After praising Bias as a specific example, he now gives us the pure, abstract principle behind that praise. And the ratio is just staggering. Give me one man from among 10,000 if he be the best. He's not just an elitist, he's saying that true excellence is incredibly, vanishingly rare.
It's the ultimate statement of his aristocratic worldview. It's not about numbers, it's about quality. He would rather have one person who is waking, who understands the logos and acts on it, than 10,000 of the nameless oxen who just follow the crowd. That one person has more value to the cosmos and the city than the entire mob combined.
And the best here clearly isn't about wealth or lineage. It's about being that even-minded person who speaks the truth and acts in keeping with nature. It's the person who will defend the city's law as if it were the wall itself. He's defining worth in purely philosophical and ethical terms.
Exactly. This is the culmination of everything he's been building in this final section. He's dismissed the crowd, defined the dangers of insolence and foolishness, laid out the path to wisdom, and then given us this final, stark equation of value. The entire purpose of a well-ordered city for Heraclitus is to produce and protect this one man in 10,000. He is the justification for the whole system.
As for the Ephesians, I would have them, youths, elders, and all those between, go hang themselves, leaving the city in the abler hands of children. With banishment of Hermodorus, they say, no man should be worthier than average. Thus, my fellow citizens declare, whoever would seek excellence can find it elsewhere among others.
My goodness, after everything, he ends with this. It's the most personal, the most venomous, and the most despairing fragment in the entire collection. He's not just critiquing his fellow citizens, he's wishing death upon all of them.
It's an explosion of contempt, and it's rooted in a specific political event, the banishment of Hermodorus. The reason the Ephesians gave for it, no man should be worthier than average, is the absolute antithesis of Heraclitus' entire philosophy. He just told us to value the one man from among 10,000, and his city has just exiled that very man for the crime of being excellent.
It's the ultimate act of the sleepers. They have taken their private, foolish world and made it the law of the land. They have institutionalized mediocrity. This isn't just ignorance anymore, it's an active, aggressive war on wisdom. His command to defend the law has become impossible because the law itself is now corrupt and opposed to the logos.
And his solution is so drastic: total self-annihilation of the adult population, leaving the city to children, who are presumably the only ones not yet corrupted by this philosophy of envy. It's a complete and total rejection of his own society. This single fragment explains his entire reputation as a misanthrope. It's not a general dislike of people, it's a specific righteous fury at a community that has chosen to drown itself in foolishness. He is a prophet whose own city has officially declared itself a wasteland for virtue.
Dogs, by this same logic, bark at what they cannot understand.
And he ends with that. After the fury of the previous fragment, he gives us this cold, sharp, and utterly dismissive analogy. Dogs, by this same logic, bark at what they cannot understand. The logic is the logic of the Ephesians.
It's the perfect final insult. The Ephesians banished Hermodoros not out of a reasoned political decision, but out of a primal, fearful, ignorant reaction. Their collective decree was nothing more than the mindless barking of an animal confronted with something it can't comprehend, in this case, true excellence.
It's his final word on the sleepers. This is what they do. Faced with the Logos, with wisdom, with the one man in 10,000, their response isn't curiosity or reverence. It's aggressive, noisy, and mindless hostility. He reduces the entire political life of his city, and by extension all societies that act this way, to an animal reflex.
It's such a powerful and bitter way to conclude the entire collection. After all the complex thoughts on the cosmos, the soul, and wisdom, he leaves us with this image of profound disappointment in humanity. The ultimate truth he has observed is that most people will simply bark at the light rather than try to see by it.
What is not yet known, those blinded by bad faith can never learn.
And he leaves us with this, a final, cutting diagnosis. He's not just talking about simple ignorance anymore. The problem isn't that they don't know. The problem is that they can never learn.
Exactly. And the reason is bad faith. That's a moral judgment. This isn't an intellectual failing, it's a character flaw. The Ephesians who banished Hermodoros, the people who bark like dogs at what they don't understand, they aren't just mistaken, they have willfully blinded themselves.
It's the perfect summary of his entire critique of the sleepers. The Logos is there, it's common to all, but they live as if in a private dream. This fragment explains why. Their bad faith is the wall they built around that private world. They are actively choosing not to see, and that choice makes learning impossible.
It's a devastating final thought. The truth, what is not yet known, is discoverable. The path is to inquire within and listen well, but none of that matters if the listener is in bad faith. Heraclitus concludes his entire work by telling us that the greatest obstacle to wisdom isn't the obscurity of the world, but the corruption of the human will.
Stupidity is doomed, therefore, to cringe at every syllable of wisdom.
Stupidity is doomed. What a final, definitive judgment to end on. It's not just that stupidity is a mistake or a temporary state, it's a condemned condition. Its fate is to cringe at every syllable of wisdom.
It's the perfect conclusion to the last few fragments. The cringing is the internal feeling that leads to the external barking we just talked about. It's why the Ephesians banished Hermodoros. Wisdom isn't just something they disagree with. It's physically painful for them to encounter. It's like an allergic reaction to reality.
That's a great way to put it, an allergy to the truth. Because they are in bad faith, as he just said, every syllable of wisdom is an accusation. It's a reminder of the common world they have willfully abandoned, and so they recoil from it. The cringe is a defense mechanism against a light they can no longer bear.
And that's the unbridgeable gap Heraclitus leaves us with. The wise speak, and the stupid, because they are doomed, can only cringe in response. There's no dialogue possible across that divide. It's a bleak, but incredibly coherent and powerful, final word on the human condition as he sees it.
While those who mouth high talk may think themselves high-minded, justice keeps the book on hypocrites and liars.
And so he ends on a promise of cosmic judgment. While those who mouth high talk may think themselves high-minded, justice keeps the book on hypocrites and liars. This is his final word on the speechmakers and the fools who follow them.
It's the ultimate consequence for being one of the sleepers. Their high talk is the language of their private dream, a world of self-deception. But Heraclitus insists that there's a common world, a shared reality governed by the Logos, and that reality is the ultimate arbiter of truth.
And that arbiter, justice, isn't a human court or even a specific god. It's the fundamental process of the cosmos itself. The ever-living fire, the principle of strife, is what keeps the book. You can't lie to the Logos. It will, in the end, reveal all things for what they are.
Exactly. It's his final, unshakable confidence that for all the barking of dogs and the foolishness of crowds, reality is non-negotiable. This isn't a threat, it's a statement of fact from his perspective. The universe itself keeps accounts, and in the final reckoning, there is no place for hypocrisy or lies. It's a powerful and absolute conclusion to his entire philosophy.
Homer I deem worthy, in a trial by combat of good cudgeling, and Archilochos the same.
And he ends the entire book by wanting to get into a literal stick fight with Homer. That's just perfect. After everything we've read about his contempt for traditional learning and poets, this is his final judgment on the cornerstones of Greek culture. He's not just refuting them intellectually, he wants to physically drive them out. It's the ultimate rejection of hearsay.
It is. And he lumps Homer, the epic poet, in with Archilochos, the lyric poet. It doesn't matter what kind of poetry it is. To him, they are both peddlers of stories and illusions that keep people asleep. They represent the cultural noise that drowns out the signal of the logos. This isn't just an argument, it's a declaration of war on the entire poetic tradition.
And the phrase trial by combat is so key. In his world, where war is the father of all things, this is how you settle a dispute. He's so confident in his own connection to the truth that he believes it would win in a physical contest. His philosophy is not a passive set of ideas, it's an active, aggressive force.
Exactly. It's the final, most visceral expression of his entire worldview. He's not here to debate in the marketplace. He's here to cudgel the foolishness out of the world. It's an incredibly arrogant, uncompromising, and perfectly Heraclitean note to end on. He leaves us with no doubt about where he stands, against pretty much everyone.
Any day stands equal to the rest.
Translator's note: this fragment, like fragments 53 and 89, exists only in a Latin paraphrase of the Greek.
And after wanting to beat Homer with a stick, he ends on this: any day stands equal to the rest. The shift in tone is just breathtaking. From pure, violent contempt to this incredibly calm, profound, almost stoic statement.
It is a stunning final note. It feels like he's pulling the camera all the way back out. After diving into the muck of human politics and foolishness, he returns to the cosmic perspective. If the Logos is the eternal, unchanging law of change, and the sun is new every day, then of course any day stands equal to the rest. The fundamental process of reality is the same on Tuesday as it is on Saturday.
It's the ultimate expression of his process metaphysics. There are no special days, no sacred moments set apart from the rest, because the sacred process is happening constantly, everywhere, all the time. But we also have to acknowledge the translator's note. This fragment, like a few other key ones, only survives in a Latin paraphrase.
Which is such a fitting way to end our reading, isn't it? It's a final reminder of the very nature of this book. We are reading fragments, echoes, and interpretations. We're trying to grasp a coherence that has survived destruction and imperfect representation, and this final, beautiful, calming thought comes to us through that very filter.
It makes it feel both profound and fragile. It's the perfect encapsulation of what it means to read Heraclitus. It's a powerful idea, but we have to hold it lightly, knowing how many layers of history and language it has passed through to reach us.
And as a final piece of wisdom, it's a powerful call to action. If any day is equal to the rest, there is no better or worse day to begin the work of waking up. The opportunity is always now.
One's bearing shapes one's fate.
Translator's note: this fragment is often translated character is fate. More literally, a man's ethos is his daemon. A person's customary ways of being and acting, in other words, are that person's guiding genius. I prefer the crisper phrasing, character is fate, because the Greek is crisp, but meanings lost in the pithier version seem worth keeping.
And this is the final fragment. One's bearing shapes one's fate. After all the cosmic pronouncements and political fury, it ends on this intensely personal, ethical note.
It's the perfect conclusion, and the translator's note here is essential. He tells us this is often translated as character is fate, and more literally, a man's ethos is his daemon, and his explanation of those words is key.
It is. The note says ethos isn't just some static character trait, it's our customary ways of being and acting. And our daemon isn't a demon, but our guiding genius, our personal destiny. So it's not what you are that shapes your fate, but how you consistently behave. It's a process which is so perfectly Heraclitean.
It's the ultimate statement of personal responsibility in his system. Your destiny isn't handed to you by the gods or by chance. It is the direct result of the character you cultivate. If you choose the bearing of a sleeper, of indulgence, of following the crowd, your fate is to be a nameless ox. If you cultivate the bearing of the waking, of mindfulness, of listening to the Logos, your fate is to be that one man in 10,000.
Exactly. This is the answer to the command that runs through the whole book, inquire within. What do you find when you inquire within? You find your ethos, and the work of wisdom is to shape that ethos into one that is aligned with the cosmic law. It's a demanding but incredibly empowering final thought. He's telling us that we are the architects of our own guiding genius. You know, I was just looking ahead in the book, and it seems we got a bit ahead of ourselves. That wasn't the final fragment at all.
Wasn't it? It felt so conclusive. Character is fate, a perfect place to end. But you're right, there are more to go.
It seems Heraclitus has a few more things to say after all. All right then, on we go.
After death comes nothing hoped for nor imagined.
And just when you think you have him pinned down with a neat ethical conclusion like character is fate, he hits you with this. After death comes nothing hoped for nor imagined. It's so stark, so absolute.
It's the ultimate rejection of religious consolation, isn't it? He's taking aim at all the traditional Greek ideas about the afterlife, the Elysian fields, the gloomy shades in Hades, all of it. He's saying that all of those hopes and stories are just that, hopes and stories. They have no bearing on reality.
And it makes the previous fragment, character is fate, so much more powerful and so much more urgent. If there is nothing after this, then your character, your ethos, isn't about getting you into a better afterlife. It is the only thing. The way you live this life is the final and only account of who you are.
Exactly. It's not a nihilistic statement, it's a radical call to focus on the here and now. The sleepers are the ones who live their lives based on what they hope for or imagine will come after. The waking are the ones who understand that this life, this process, this alignment with the Logos is all there is. It's the ultimate anti-escapist philosophy.
The revenant keeps watch over the dead and living.
Okay, so he just told us in no uncertain terms that there's nothing after death, no imagined afterlife, and now he immediately gives us a revenant? A ghost? It feels like a direct contradiction.
It has to be deliberate. He sets up an absolute statement and then immediately challenges it with a paradox. He can't be talking about a literal ghost. The revenant has to be a metaphor for something else, something that fits within his system.
So what is it? What is the thing that is constantly returning and keeps watch over the dead and living? The only thing that fits is the Logos itself, the ever-living fire. It's the eternal process of transformation. It's the force that oversees the entire cycle of matter changing from one form to another, from what we call living to what we call dead and back again.
That makes perfect sense. The fire is the ultimate revenant. It's a constant returning presence that governs everything. It keeps watch in the sense that it is the law that all things must obey. By using this spooky, evocative word, he forces us to see the cosmic law not as an abstract principle, but as an active, ever-present, and inescapable power. It's the ultimate judge of all states of being.
Nightwalker, Magus, and their entourage, Bacchants and mystics of the winepress, with stained faces and damp wits.
Well, that's quite a list. Nightwalker, Magus, Bacchants, and mystics of the winepress. He's painting a picture of the practitioners of mystery cults, the ecstatic, secretive side of Greek religion.
It feels like a direct continuation of his attack on the sleepers, but now he's targeting a very specific group, and look how he ends it, with stained faces and damp wits. That's the core of his critique right there.
It is. The stained faces suggest something artificial, a mask, a pretense, but the damp wits is pure Heraclitus. It's his central metaphor for foolishness and a soul out of touch with reality. He's literally saying that their religious practice, which is often fueled by wine, makes them stupid.
Exactly. For these mystics, intoxication and ecstasy are a path to divine insight. For Heraclitus, they are a path to a moist soul, to ignorance. He is completely rejecting any form of wisdom that is not arrived at through the dry light of sober reason. Their secret rites and private experiences are the very definition of the private world of the sleepers, and he wants no part of it.
Initiation, here, into the ancient mysteries so honored among men mocks holiness.
So after listing all those mystics and Bacchants, he delivers the final verdict. Their initiation, the very thing that's supposed to make them holy, actually mocks holiness. That's such a strong condemnation.
It is, and it's a direct consequence of the damp wits he mentioned in the last fragment. In his system, true holiness or wisdom is a dry light. So these rituals, which often involve intoxication and ecstatic states that moisten the soul, are the exact opposite of the path to truth. They're a performance of delusion.
And it's a rejection of their secrecy too. The whole point of the Logos is that it's common to all, even if most people don't listen to it. But the mysteries are by definition a private, exclusive experience. They are the ultimate private world of the sleepers. And he's not afraid to attack them, even though he admits they are so honored among men.
That's the key. He's saying that the popular path to the divine is a sham. True initiation for Heraclitus isn't a secret ceremony. It's the difficult, sober work of waking up and aligning yourself with the one common cosmic law. Anything else is a dangerous and foolish parody.
They raise their voices at stone idols as a man might argue with his doorpost. They have understood so little of the gods.
And now, after attacking the secret mystery cults, he turns his attention to the most public and common form of worship, praying to statues. And the analogy he uses is just withering.
It's incredible. They raise their voices at stone idols as a man might argue with his doorpost. It perfectly captures the futility of it all. The doorpost is an inanimate, functional object. It can't hear you, it can't respond. He's saying that praying to a statue is exactly the same kind of absurd, one-sided conversation with an object.
It's a total rejection of popular idolatry, and it flows directly from his metaphysics. The divine, for Heraclitus, isn't a static being that can be represented by a stone carving. The divine is the ever-living fire, the constant process of change, the logos. To pray to a fixed object is to completely miss the point.
Exactly. The final line is the diagnosis. They have understood so little of the gods. Their error isn't one of piety, it's one of comprehension. They are engaging in a practice that reveals their fundamental ignorance about how the cosmos actually works. It's another piece of evidence in his ongoing case against the sleepers.
Dionysus is their name for death. And if they did not claim the statue of the drunk they worshipped was a god, or call their incoherent song about his cock their hymn, everyone would know what filth their shamelessness has made of them and of the name of God.
Dionysus is their name for death. It's another one of those incredible paradoxes he throws at us. Dionysus is the god of ecstatic life, fertility, wine, and Heraclitus just flatly equates him with his opposite.
It's his unity of opposites in its most concentrated form. In some of the mystery traditions, Dionysus and Hades were seen as two aspects of the same deity. Heraclitus is likely tapping into that, but using it for his own ends, to show that the frenzied pursuit of life in these rituals is actually a kind of death, the death of the rational, dry soul.
And then he goes after the rituals themselves. He reduces the god to a drunk and their sacred hymns to an incoherent song about his cock. It's so contemptuous. He's stripping away all the religious prestige and just describing what he sees in the most literal, crude terms possible.
Exactly. He's saying that the only thing that separates this behavior from filth is the label they put on it. If they weren't calling it worship, everyone would see it for the debased, shameless activity it is. For Heraclitus, this isn't a path to the divine, it's a corruption of both the worshippers and the very idea of God.
A sacred ritual may be performed by one entirely purified, but seldom. Other rites belong to those confined in the sodden lumber of the body.
After all that intense criticism of specific cults and practices, he offers this tiny, tiny concession. He's not saying all ritual is impossible, just that a truly sacred one is incredibly rare. A sacred ritual may be performed, but seldom.
And the condition he sets is everything. It can only be performed by one entirely purified. In his system, that doesn't mean someone who is washed in a special spring. It means someone who has achieved a dry soul, someone who is waking and aligned with the logos. The truly purified person is the philosopher, the one in 10,000.
Plungers. Exactly. And then he gives us the contrast, and what a phrase for it. Other rights belong to those confined in the sodden lumber of the body. It's just brutal. He's saying that almost all religious practice as we know it is just the activity of people trapped in wet, dead wood.
It's the perfect synthesis of his metaphors. Sodden is the moist soul of the drunkard and the fool. Lumber is inert, mindless matter. And confined is the state of the sleepers, trapped in their private worlds. He's saying that popular religion isn't a spiritual activity at all. It's a purely physical, ignorant, and bodily one. It's the noise made by the unenlightened.
Tainted souls who try to purify themselves with blood are like the man who steps in filth and thinks to bathe in sewage.
Translator's note: Fragments 129 and 130 are transposed for the sake of resolution.
Wow, just when you think his analogies can't get any more visceral, he gives us this. A man who steps in filth and thinks to bathe in sewage. It's such a disgusting and powerful image.
It's the perfect metaphor for his critique of blood sacrifice. He's saying that the very act they believe is purifying them, the ritual killing, is actually a deeper form of pollution. It's not just ineffective, it makes the problem worse. You are trying to wash away a moral stain with a physical one.
It connects perfectly to everything he's been saying about the soul. True purification is about achieving a dry, fiery state of rational awareness. Blood is the ultimate moist material substance. To try and purify a soul with blood is, in his system, a complete category error. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
And we have to notice the translator's note here. He says he's transposed this fragment and the next one for the sake of resolution. This is the final act of curation we'll see from him. He's deliberately arranging the ending of the entire book to build to what he sees as the most fitting conclusion.
It makes sense. This fragment feels like the absolute peak of Heraclitus's attack on popular religion. After mocking their statues, their ecstatic rituals, and their secret initiations, he leaves them with this final image. They are all just fools bathing in sewage, thinking it will make them clean.
silence, healing.
Translators note the one word ake has several meanings: silence, calm, lulling, healing.
And this is where the translator chose to end the entire work. After the rage and the disgust of the last fragment, after a book filled with fire and war and contempt, he leaves us with this: silence, healing. The contrast is absolutely stunning.
It is, and the translator's note is everything. That one Greek word, ake, holds all of these meanings together: silence, calm, lulling, healing. It's not a sequence of events, it's a single unified state of being. The silence is the healing, the calm is the cure.
It's the perfect antidote to everything he's been railing against. The problem with the sleepers is their noise. The noise of the crowd, the incoherent hymns, the barking at what they don't understand. The path to wisdom, he told us, is to listen well, but you can't listen well until you are silent. This is the final prerequisite for hearing the logos.
Exactly. After all of his own shouting, all of his philosophical combat, he concludes that the ultimate state, the purified state, is silence. He has spent 129 fragments trying to cudgel us into a state where we can finally just be quiet and perceive reality. The healing isn't in his words, it's in the calm that comes after the words have stopped. The translator was absolutely right to put this here. It is the perfect resolution.
And that was the final fragment, as arranged by our translator, Brooks Haxton. Silence, healing. We've made it to the end.
What a journey. We started with Heraclitus telling us about the logos, this universal principle that everyone is subject to but almost no one understands, leading him to call most people the walking dead. And from there he built this entire worldview based on one core idea: everything is in flux, like an ever-living fire.
Exactly. He completely rejected the idea of a stable, underlying substance and instead gave us a universe defined by pattern change, by process. And the engine of that process was strife. He told us that war is the father of all things, and that harmony doesn't come from peace, but from the strain of binding opposites, like a bow or a lyre.
And he applied that one single law to everything, to the cosmos with the elements transforming into one another, to ethics where good and ill are one, and most importantly, to the soul. He gave us that incredible distinction between the dry soul, which is wise and good, and the moist soul, which belongs to the drunkard and the fool.
The whole thing was a call to inquire within, to seek wisdom by aligning yourself with this cosmic law, but that led him to such a stark and unforgiving political view. He had nothing but contempt for the masses, the sleepers, calling them nameless oxen who follow speechmakers into foolishness. For him, the only one who mattered was that one man from among 10,000s who was actually awake.
Which culminated in that furious, bitter condemnation of his own city, Ephesus, for banishing a man of excellence. It really put his entire reputation as a misanthrope into context. But I think what's just as fascinating as Heraclitus' philosophy is the way this book has presented it to us. We have to keep remembering that we don't have his original work. We only have these fragments, quoted by later authors who had their own agendas.
And our translator, Brooks Haxton, has been an incredibly active guide on this journey. He openly admitted to reordering fragments, rephrasing them, even changing geographical details, all in service of creating a coherent and lucid philosophical experience. We weren't just reading Heraclitus, we were reading Haxton's Heraclitus.
It's a powerful reminder that reading ancient philosophy is always an act of interpretation, and this book, with its fragmentary nature, makes that more obvious than most. But the result is something so potent. This book is a challenge, a prod, a good cudgeling, as Heraclitus might say. It demands that you wake up and think.
It really does. And to have it all end on that single translated word, ake, meaning silence, calm, and healing, is just a masterful choice by the translator. After all the fire and fury, the ultimate state is a quiet, attentive calm. It's the only place from which you can truly begin to listen to the logos.
We hope this read-along has helped you find your own way into this incredible and difficult text. We've offered our interpretations, but the real work, as Heraclitus himself would insist, is for you to do on your own.
So please, go and get a copy of the Fragments. Read it, argue with it, and see what you find when you inquire within. Thanks for listening.